So I'm trying to get them correct, especially when the people are right in front of me.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen the channel, I always have to do that. It's a ritual that we have here in my channel. So I'm here with Mike Ricksecker, and this guy is super. You know what? I should actually start it with how I actually learned about you. I was sitting with Christina Gomez. I was doing the interview, and we had finished, and we're off camera, and she's like, at the end, I'm talking about a lot of paranormal stuff because I know she's like primarily UFOs, but
Yeah.
I always ask guests about paranormal experiences, things of that nature. And she goes, "Oh, you know who you need to talk to." And I'm like, "Who do I need to talk to?" She's like, "You need to talk to Mike." She's like, "Write this name down right now." And I'm like, "Okay, perfect." And then she brought up shadow people. And I was like, "Oh, I understand completely why you want me to talk to this person." But
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
we get,
Christina's fantastic. So I appreciate that, Christina. And
yeah,
I guess I ought to as well. There we go.
perfect, perfect. I like the participation. Yeah, Christina's amazing.
Yeah.
Again, just somebody I randomly stumbled onto, and I was like, she's doing amazing work. So, right now, just to talk about what she's been working on, she was talking about these Peruvian mummies, these alien mummies,
Yeah.
for like a year before it hit like Rogan and Jesse Michaels and all these big channels. And she was talking to the team and doing research. She talked to one of the researchers before he passed away in a car accident, like, and
Mhm.
she dubbed it over in English. Like, she's doing really, really great work.
She really is. Yeah. She's amazing. I've been on her show several times. We've known each other a few years now, and she's actually a really good musician as well. She does like a lot of ambient sort of music, which I pipe into my playlist. So yeah, she's multi-talented as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Well, before we get into shadow people, I was actually taking a look at these as I get into the more professional guests, they have
Mhm.
these kits where they show us everything that they have laid out. And me and my wife are going through it, and she's like, "Oh my God, he was in Ancient Aliens." We're like, "What?" I'm like, "What?" She's like, "He was on the History Channel." We're like, "Wait a second," because me and my wife are so into this stuff. Like, this is like
Great.
what we talk about. So when we found that out, I was like, "Oh, I have to talk about that." What was that experience like? What were you like? What was that like for you?
Yeah, well, I've been on several episodes of Ancient Aliens now. This fall, the my eighth episode that well, I can't. I was about to say filmed. I've actually filmed several episodes, been in their editing process. Sometimes you end up in an episode, sometimes you don't.
Mhm.
But yeah, the the first time I ever filmed for them was on Shadow People. They had already filmed the episode, and I'm not really sure what it was about the episode they didn't like, but they canvassed some more people about, okay, who's a person we really need to talk to about Shadow People. And one of the producers that I had networked with long ago said, well, Mike is the guy that you need to talk to about that. He's written this book, A Walk in the Shadows. So yeah, they came across me, my book, flew me out there, and it was a great conversation. We hit on a lot of different topics. I was put up in this it's an old mansion out in Pasadena, California. It serves now as the historic museum. It's absolutely beautiful. It's the Fenez Mansion, I think is the name. And
Okay.
I've actually been there several times now. And there's a room that they have. It's a little library office sort of thing. And aside from that first episode that I did for Shadow People, when we film at that mansion, they put me in that room. They've now called it Mike's office. So
Huh.
it's been a fun experience working with those guys. A really class act, really great crew. And yeah, so I've been out there for a handful of episodes now.
Cool, cool. Yeah, that's very interesting because that like notoriously has the one gentleman with the hair, and he's turned
Oh,
into
Giorgio, yeah.
these aliens.
It's aliens, but it's aliens. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's I was always a fan of the show. I'd been watching it for a long, long time, so it was an honor for me to actually get a chance to participate in it as a special guest.
Yeah, yeah, that's wild. And you're talking about shadow people. Now, I was
Mhm.
going to ask a little more about the TV stuff, but since you brought up the shadow people, the
Yeah.
book, tell us a little bit about that book. We're going to get more into shadow people, but like what made you write a book about shadow people?
Well, I'd had experiences with shadow people as I was growing up, even into my adult life. My very first really significant paranormal experience was what we would call a shadow person. But at that time, I had no idea what it was. I was 8 years old, woke up in the middle of the night. And there was a tall, dark figure standing in the corner of my bedroom. And again, had no idea what it was. I thought somebody had broken into the house. They, maybe were there to rob the place, maybe kill me, because that's where your mind goes at the
Or
age of 8. I'd seen enough TV and films at that point, right? And well, I'm still alive to tell the tale, so it didn't kill me, which is great. It did get physically interactive with me though. So I was trying to scream, my mouth opened up, nothing came out, and this thing approached my bed, leaned over, and I'm staring into this blank black face. There's like nothing there, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, nothing there. And then it did something really strange. It grabbed me by the wrists, crossed my arms across my body, and then ran off down the hall, and of all places into a closet. And at that point, I found my voice, found my legs, ran off screaming in my parents' bedroom. And they're trying to calm me down, console me, trying to tell me I had just had a bad dream, but I knew I hadn't had a bad dream. I was awake for this whole thing. So that was really the first significant paranormal experience I had. And then, and I would never call that a haunted house or anything like that. It was just a one-off incident that occurred. But as as I grew up, we moved out of that house. Other things happened along the way. So I'd always had this interest in the paranormal because of that incident. I knew there was something else going on with this world.
wow. Wow, that's so interesting. I was just doing an episode on sleep paralysis
Mhm.
and astral projection.
Yeah.
Um, there was somebody in Hollywood. They were talking about how it's a gift, but you hear all these stories of sleep paralysis and it not seeming like a gift whatsoever. So I was just doing a
Yeah, I don't know if I would call that a gift because
yeah.
I've had it. Most people get it where they wake up and they're paralyzed,
Mhm.
and I've had it the opposite way in which my body was just so exhausted. My whole body went to sleep except my brain, and I was awake and cognizant of everything going on around me. So I was essentially paralyzed, unable to move. And yeah, it was really really strange. And I was in I was at work in the time when I was still in the Air Force, and you don't want to get caught like sleeping on the job
Yeah.
when you're in the military. So it was kind of doubly scary. Like, okay, I can't move, and I might get in some really serious trouble here. So I wouldn't call that a gift.
Yeah, yeah, no, I wouldn't either. But in the research for that episode, I came across somebody, Matt Rife. He's a comedian. He's very much into the paranormal, very much into the occult.
Mhm.
He recently just bought the Annabelle house, the
Yeah,
possessed doll.
yeah,
So
yeah. He bought the Warren House. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But he was telling a story. Interesting enough, he was saying pretty much the same experience as you, where he had this woman that was like very black face woman and just
Mhm.
kind of leaned over him. And
Yeah.
then the key thing that showed, like she ran into a closet as well, which is very interesting.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that is why we have this inherent fear of in the closet as kids. You know?
Could be. I mean, I certainly at that after that happened, I would keep my closet door closed because where it showed up was in the corner of the bedroom. The closet was off to the right hand side, and then the window was on the left hand side, but it was over by the closet. So yeah, I kind of kept the door closed after that, even though it didn't come out of the closet.
Mhm.
Yeah, there is something a little spooky about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it. Even as a kid, I would do the same thing. I would always make sure the closet was closed when I went to
Yeah.
sleep. Now, when this happened, did you notice any changes? I know it's probably hard, 8 years old, right? Did you notice anything different about yourself or otherwise?
I mean, not that I can really recall. Yeah, I didn't personally change, at least not that I think I did. Um, it's a lot of the questions I get are, what did it feel like when it touched me and that sort of thing. It just felt like anybody else. People wonder, was it tingly? Did it give me, like, was there some sort of energy transference or anything like that? Did it imprint on me? No, nothing like that. It just felt like anybody else grabbing my arms and crossing them across my body. Uh, but I mean, I guess the one thing I could probably take away from that, and I have, and I've hypothesized about this, that because of that incident. And the incidents I had at the following house was there was something about my own energy, my own personal resonance, in which I was able to, when they were around, the shadows, I could tune into them. I could feel whatever that frequency is, and mine would tune into that, and I'd get a glimpse of it, even if I'm standing right next to somebody
Mhm.
and they're not seeing it, and it's like it's right there.
Really?
Yeah.
So even now, today, you can see these entities.
Yeah, into my adulthood, I still do on occasion. It doesn't happen as often as, well, I used to do a lot more with paranormal investigations, and I'd
Mhm.
go out there and I'd go into these places that had, a lot of activity going on. And so, yeah, I was running into shadows. I wouldn't say left and right, but more often, than now. One of the more interesting incidents that kind of went down the road of tuning into these things was, we had done. I was hosting an event at a place called Mineral Springs Hotel in Alton, Illinois. It's an old historic hotel, and the top floor of it was abandoned, but this one corner suite had a haunting of this woman who unfortunately had taken her own life in that room, and she's still there to this day. So we were up there doing an EVP session, looking for Pearl, trying to talk to Pearl. A little bit of activity there, but all of a sudden I start hearing some noises from down the hall. And so I go out there and I'm looking down the hall, and I'm seeing this shadowy smoke billowing up at the end of the hall. And I'm thinking, is the place on fire? I'm like sniffing around. Nothing, it doesn't smell like anything's burning.
Yeah.
And as it was coming down the hall, it started creeping up the wall on the right hand side. It'd creep up and creep back down, doing this sort of thing as it was coming closer and closer. And then all of a sudden, this one time that it creeped up the wall on the right hand side, it morphed into this apparition of a little girl. And by then, the others had joined me. There was like 5 of us there looking at this little girl. And we're trying to coax her to come closer and closer. But she had stopped at this one particular doorway, which people had reported for years was a room where there was the spirit of a little girl that would hang out in there. So it's like, are we actually looking at that little girl? But we all saw her a little bit differently. Like, I saw her fully formed from her head all the way down to about her knees, and then she dissipated away, while others saw her fully formed at her feet, and then upward it kind of dissipated away at her head, and they like couldn't really see her face clearly or anything like that. So it's pretty interesting how, yeah, we all saw her, but we all saw her a bit differently. And that's because we all have our own personal resonance. Like, the human standing resonance is anywhere between like 9 to 16 hertz. Everybody's a little bit different. And of course, the spirit of the little girl also have her own personal resonance. So yeah, we all saw her a little bit differently. And so that's why I hypothesize, one of the reasons why I hypothesize that, some people are going to see more shadows and apparitions. Some people are going to see more apparitions than shadows. And some people are kind of in the middle and don't really see any of it.
Wow. That's very interesting. The fact that you guys all saw, as you're explaining that everybody saw her differently, it kind of makes sense now. I mean, you know, you're looking at her with your two eyes.
Yeah.
People always talk about the concept of the third eye, that more spiritual eye. And, there could be a, 20/20 vision when it comes to that type of thing. And there could
Mhm.
be a 20/10, and like other people just may not have as much sight as others, you know? So we're
Right.
all seeing it differently. Whereas like
Yeah.
somebody who has the very clear sight is like, oh, I can see her from head to toe. I see everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Again, it all comes down to frequency, resonance, energy, vibration, and everybody's a little bit different. And some people are naturally more inclined or more gifted than others. So, with a lot of people in this field, when we start talking about these sorts of things, and we're talking with psychic mediums, or people who do maybe natural healing like Reiki and other things like that. Um, Everybody can kind of do it to a degree, but some people it's going to be more natural than others. So, you can teach somebody to play the piano, they can plunk along, but there are others that are just gifted, and you can teach them the piano and they become a maestro.
Mhm.
So it's, everybody's a little bit different.
Wow. Okay. That's very interesting. I would love to, like part of me says I would love to go and do some investigation like that and be a part of something like that. And then the other part is like, but then all of a sudden you see an apparition of a little girl and now I have to sleep with the lights on for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this when it comes to paranormal investigations, and the television shows have done a lot to like really hype up. This place is super haunted and all this activities going on. You got to understand they've been out there like 3-4 days, and what you're seeing is like 40 minutes worth of hours and hours and hours. So yeah, there's nights that you're just sitting in a cold, dusty, old building and nothing is happening. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience with that little girl, but I'd investigated Mineral Springs Hotel countless number of times because I lived in the area for a while, and that was the first time I'd ever seen her.
Wow.
After all those years. So yeah, it's one of those things you can't make happen on demand, which is one of the challenges of investing the paranormal and trying to keep the scientific method in mind with it, because with science you need to repeat and repeat and repeat. And again, these things don't happen on demand. So how do you make it repeat? You also need a control object when you do scientific testing. Well, if you're trying to show that some place is haunted, then your control object has to be a place that is not haunted. Well, okay, prove to me that that place is not haunted and to be my control object. So so it becomes a challenge in that sense with paranormal investigations.
That's interesting. That's interesting. How long have you been doing paranormal investigations like that?
Um, well, I say that I've been involved some way, shape, or form for like the last 30 to 35 years. Technically, my first little paranormal investigation, I was about 15 years old, like around 1989. Had no idea what I was doing. My friend David and I were at a friend Lori's house. She was living in an older home in the downtown area of the town we lived at, and we're just chatting, shooting the breeze, teen drama, all that stuff. And all of a sudden she says, I think my house is haunted. And David and I perk up and like, oh, okay, tell us the ghost stories. And so she's telling us about different things that happen around the house. And there's old family cemetery in the backyard, all this stuff. And her main concern was her bedroom, that there's this one particular wall, whenever she would hang something up on it, like posters and things like that, they would always fall down. It would be like an hour, a day, a week later, whatever, it would always fall down. She couldn't keep anything tacked up on this wall. So it was like the quote unquote haunted wall. So David and I are like, all right, let's go check it out. So we're going to go investigate. And so, yeah, so we're checking out the house. We're checking out her room. She's telling us more stories. And all of a sudden, my friend David put his hand flat on the wall like that. And he started turning this bright red and started sweating profusely. I'm looking at David. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on with my friend? I'd never seen anything like this before. So he starts going like wall to wall in the house, like trying to find other hot spots and things like that. And that was like the moment I knew that, and I didn't know what it was at the time. You didn't have television shows and things like that. The only one you could really say we had going on at that time, and actually was, its run had ended long beforehand, was In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. On occasion there would be some ghost stuff on there, but the ghost shows weren't there. People weren't really, yeah, there were paranormal investigators around, but it wasn't really a thing like it is today. So I had no idea what this was. I knew I was going to be involved some way, shape, or form. So by the time fast forward some years, the World Wide Web is becoming proliferant, and started connecting with people online, to talk about my experiences. Hit a bunch of forums like Yahoo groups, stuff like that, and started getting more and more involved. But it really wasn't until like the mid 2000s when I actually scored the deal for my first ghost book, Ghosts of Maryland, that I started really seriously investigating more and actually going out on these paranormal investigations rather than the more kind of amateur stuff that I was doing beforehand.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. The Ghosts of Maryland, was this a real story? Like what was this?
Yeah. So I'd had a mystery novel out that came out in 2004, Deadly Airs. And this tells you how long ago it was. I was marketing it on MySpace.
Wow.
Yeah. And an editor for the publishing house came across my work, and she said, "Well, I know that you're a fiction writer and you're writing mystery fiction, but I also noticed that you have an interest in the paranormal." I'd written some paranormal short stories, and I had some other things that I would post on occasion in relation to it. So it's just like, I know you're a fiction writer, but I see that you have an interest in the paranormal, and you live in Maryland. I no longer do, but I was at the time.
Mhm.
And she said, "We're expanding our line of paranormal books. Would you be interested in writing a book on true ghosts and hauntings in the state of Maryland?" And so I thought about it for a day, but basically jumped on it. It was like it was a project that fell right in my lap in something that I was interested in. So I always chalked that up to, the universe was kind of steering me down a particular course. Like, okay, you're a published author now. Yeah, we're going to take you in this direction. And so, yeah, it was all kinds of historic haunts and ghost tales from across the state. I did incorporate a lot of history within it, so it actually qualified. And I kind of found out about it later on, but it actually qualified for Louisiana State University Civil War review because I had so much Civil War history within the
Wow.
book that related to the hauntings. Yeah.
Wow. Very interesting. Yeah, those synchronicities are very interesting
Mhm.
as they push you, right? It's always like you tell me that now and I'm like, "Oh, okay, well this just makes sense." Like looking back, it makes so
Right.
much sense, but it's interesting all the little nudges. That's why I always say to people when it comes to synchronicities, signs from God, you have to be very aware that they're happening all the time, because you could have easily said no, and then it's like, where would you be? Like, you
Right.
know?
Well, I'd still be working on the mystery fiction, or I've been actually on the side writing some sci-fi fantasy, but everything else that's happened since then with not just the paranormal, because the paranormal was like a gateway into everything else that I'm doing now with like Stargates, portals, the tours that I'm doing now in ancient Egypt. The paranormal was really just the tip of the iceberg for this whole deeper interdimensional world.
Yes, yes. Okay. So, I mean, I don't know, when we talk about the interdimensional world, I guess we should start with shadow people. I mean, that's where we were at first, right? So I guess my first question that just popped up from what you were talking about, you're saying you can still see them.
Mhm.
Just really quick, are you seeing this with people that have any darkness or depression or fear associated with them? Are you just seeing them just out and about by themselves, or are they attached to people? How are you seeing them?
Well, it's a mixture. It depends on the shadow, and I will say this: people tend to fear what they don't understand. So a lot of times when somebody sees a shadow, they immediately go to it's nasty, dark, evil, nefarious, that sort of thing. I mean, the first one that I saw, I thought somebody was in the room going to kill me. I immediately jumped to nasty thoughts, but it really depends on the shadow because they can be all kinds of different things. Yeah, they can be a human spirit that hasn't fully manifest as an apparition. They can be an extraterrestrial. They can be an interdimensional being. They can be a time slip. They could be a light being, and you're just seeing like the core of the being and not the light, because what it comes down to is our eyes only see into a very narrow band of the entire spectrum. So it's just what our eyes are able to take in of whatever this being might be. And again, they can be all kinds of different things. So yeah, there's no one straight answer. And that's something that people want. Like, what is a shadow person? It's like, well, you're going to have to put on our investigator hat and figure that out for your particular shadow.
Ah, interesting, interesting. Because that is one of my first questions. Like, what are these shadow people?
Yeah.
Right. And I guess there is that's interesting. One thing you just said was time slip. I would love to understand what that is. What does that mean? Time slip.
Oh, that's going to dive all into it. So do you want to go right into time travel?
Oh, it goes into time travel and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Hold on. Let them I do wanna go there. I love going to places like
All
that.
right.
But then, what is the shadow dimension? Because I noticed that you've referenced
Yeah.
that a few times in videos and books.
So the Shadow Dimension is my 6-part docu-series that I'm a filmmaker as well, and I produced this about 4 years ago. Well, started the project 5 years ago during COVID, so that became a challenge to actually film because a lot of the locations that I wanted to go to just were shut down at the time. But we were able to go to the Conjuring House, and I had access to Mineral Springs, which I mentioned before. And yeah, this is a 6-part docuseries that dives into the world of the shadows and what these things actually may be. And I was targeting locations that actually also had reported portal activity, because I was working under the premise that what a kind of quote unquote true shadow person would be if we had to say they were one thing, which they're not. But if we had to say that they were one thing, that they would be something interdimensional in nature and coming into this world through portals. So I wanted to go to locations that have reported portal activity. And yeah, so that's running. It's streaming on Tubi TV, Roku channel, some other smaller streaming platforms now, and in post-production right now on the second installment of that. So it should be out here in the next few months.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. So right now it's available on Tubi, you said?
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. What's it called? Say it again for me.
The Shadow Dimension.
Shadow Dimension. Yeah, I'm gonna look that up. I didn't realize that I could have just watched something.
Yeah.
I'm doing all this
Makes it a little easier.
I'm doing all this reading on you, and I'm like, oh man, could have just watched the thing.
Yeah, well, it's only part of the story. The book is a lot more in depth on the material.
True. Okay, so then there's so many fun things that you want to touch on, but I'll stick with the shadow people. I mean,
Right.
do they have any connection to demons or any connection to jinn or Nephilim or anything of that sort in your experience, your
They
research?
can. Yeah. Again, it depends on the shadow. So yeah, things like the jinn, that's kind of more of a Middle Eastern idea of shadows, and we go far back into history. We call it in our modern vernacular a demon, but basically it was a entity known as Alu in ancient Sumer, which was a binding spirit, hover over people at night, and basically impart upon them the sleep paralysis. So today we call it old hag syndrome, but that's related to the jinn, and kind of the even though jinn is comes out of that ancient world, it's a little bit more modern than say Alu. So yeah, we find this idea all over the world of whether it's the old hag or a ghoul sitting on the chest. You have the famous painting of the nightmare, where you've actually got the black horse poking its head in, and the ghoul is sitting on the woman's chest, and all of that. So this is what I'll say is, again, it comes down to identifying who or what this particular shadow is. Shadow people in many cases are just like people, in the sense that, and it's going to sound very simplistic, that like with people, some people are good, some people are bad. Same with shadow people. Some are good, some are bad. Most are really kind of in the middle, rather benign, neither good nor bad. A lot of them are just standing there staring, watching, which isn't evil. It's not nasty or nefarious. It might be creepy because, you might wake up and there it is in your room. But, a lot of these are just kind of moving about. You might be standing in your kitchen and cooking dinner. One walks down the hallway. You might be out in the woods and see one moving about the trees. They're all over.
Wow. Jeez. That is whether you're good or bad, that is extremely terrifying for me.
Well, that's what I said. People fear what they don't understand. So when you see this black form, and especially if it's in your home and you did not invite the thing in, you're like, okay, what is that? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, usually immediately we go to like the idea that there's an intruder in the house, because they in most cases take the form of a humanoid being, or at least similar in shape. Sometimes they could be a mist or a wisp or something like that, or like the black smoke. But in many times they take a generally bipedal sort of form similar to us, and that's what spooks people, is there's somebody there.
That's interesting. I have had that experience, and
Mhm.
doing more of this paranormal research, UFO, UAP, occult, I kind of unearthed that memory. But when I was 15, I remember back in the day when you just had one computer in the house and AOL, and you're on Napster and you're downloading things. I'm listening to music, and it was like my outlet for listening to music. And I would do it into the wee hours of the night because I'm very much a night owl. And
Yeah.
I have a hood on. It's like I'm just listening to music. And I remember I'm in the kitchen. That's where it was. I remember looking up to where it would be the living room hallway. And it's maybe 4.5, maybe 5 feet away from me. And I look and I see some figure,
Okay.
so much so that it just like shut me down. I was just like, I'm not gonna move. I'm not
Right.
gonna move until 5 in the morning until the sun comes out. I'm just gonna keep my head down. And I'm not gonna look up again because I'm terrified. I remember that happening. I just kind of kept my head down for a
Mhm.
while, probably for like another hour and a half, 2 hours. And then I looked up and I was like, okay, nothing's there. And I just went upstairs and went to bed. But that was the only time I had something that would be referred to as a shadow person, because it
Yeah.
wasn't a ghost. There was no face, nothing like that. It just seemed
Mhm.
like a figure that was maybe like 5'11", 6 foot.
Okay.
Definitely wasn't any of my family because, we had the type of house where you knew every creak. You knew if somebody was coming
Right.
from upstairs. You knew if they were going to the washroom. Like you could hear everything. Small house, right? So it wasn't any of them. And yeah, that was my one experience with it. Didn't touch me, nothing like that.
Yeah, it was
Exactly
just
like you
hanging out
said.
there. Right.
Yeah, it looked like it was just looking at me, and then I guess disappeared. Maybe walked off. Maybe skipped off. I don't know. I didn't look.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, you never know because you didn't watch it. But you mentioned the hoodie, so, I will talk about one particular story here that is actually, well, so it was a story that was related to me a few years back, and, this young man, when he was, like, really little, when he was a child, he walked into the kitchen one day, and there by the kitchen table was this tall, dark, hooded shadow figure. Scared him to death. He ran out of the room, and he's terrified. And this became the hooded shadow person story of the household for years and years. So grows up. He's a young man now. One day he's in the kitchen, at the kitchen table. He's making himself a sandwich. He's wearing a hoodie. And all of a sudden, he sees walking through the doorway to the kitchen this short shadow person, which stops and then takes off out of the room.
no,
And
no.
And all of a sudden he's like, "Whoa, wait a second. That wasn't a hooded shadow figure that I saw. It was me. I'm wearing the hood and all that." Yeah. So that in that sense there, that is a time slip because it was just him seeing himself at another point in time.
Wow.
And the reason I believe why it came off as a shadow and not him just like seeing himself is again, everything comes down to frequency, resonance, energy, vibration. And I don't know how old you are, but some of your viewers might be old enough to remember that in your car, yeah, we still have the dials, but now it's click, 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 just very easily go to point one, point three, point five. But back in the day, no, you had to fine tune that band. There was no clicking through channels. You had to fine tune that band to get precisely on the channel that you wanted. So you want to get all that static before or after. And so I think that's what was going on here was that, yeah, he was in tune with his own energy a bit, but not fully enough to get the full form. And it was like a little bit before, a little bit after that frequency. So he got a glimpse of it as a shadow.
That's very interesting. Very, very
Yeah.
interesting. Makes you wonder, huh? That's very huh. Wow. That makes me think of it way different because I have had an experience when I was meditating. It was actually the first time I meditated. I had this
Mhm.
crazy experience where I sat down. It was maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and I'm doing this meditation, listening to like this music. There's
Mhm.
binaural beats or something like that, and I'm in the basement. I walk in, so I'm sitting down. I walk in, and I am very much the way I am now. I even have the outfit that I
Yeah.
saw myself in. I have this outfit. I know I do. It was like these cargo shorts that are like, down to my almost to my ankles kind of thing, like or maybe my calf or whatever. And a bunch of pockets on them.
Mhm.
I was in good shape. I'm in pretty good shape right now. And I walk in and I go, "You're doing great. Keep going." You got to keep doing this, keep doing stuff like
Mhm.
this. And then I hear I hear kids laughing, and then that version of me says I have to go, and then he just
Okay.
leaves, and that was it. And it was the weirdest experience. It was so tangible. It was
Mhm.
so clear, and I had never had. That was my first time meditating. I never had an experience like that meditating since.
That's really, really interesting. Yeah, when you meditate and I mean, you are changing your frequency when you do that. Yeah, you can enter these, other moments in times. You can enter into these other realms. You can free float, and there's all kinds of different possibilities when you meditate. It doesn't happen every time, but it can happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just the first time. I was trying to just figure out this whole thing. Like today I'm Christian, but back then I
Mhm.
had no religion and I was just looking for something. And
Yeah.
I was just learning about meditation for the first time. And I was like, I had a lot going on in my mind as a young man. And I'm like, if this will help me like straighten out my mind, then and calm
Yeah.
it down, then I'm like, I'm all for it. And yeah, that was the first experience I had. So after that, I was hooked. I was like an
You want more
hour.
of those, yeah.
Yeah, I was like an hour in the morning, hour at night. Like
Mhm.
I went very hard for a long time. But that's interesting. Very interesting. That's going to make me think about that way differently now. So when it comes to the shadow people, right? I guess how do you decipher? I was talking about demons, Nephilim, jinn.
Yeah.
How do you decipher what's what?
Yeah, again, that's where I was saying you got to put your investigative hat on, and you really need to start getting into some of the details of, okay, what exactly was seen? How did it portray itself? What was the circumstances? All these sorts of things. And sometimes it's just like a quick one-off like that, and you're never going to get any details of it. But other times you have more information to go on. So like that one, you had two different incidents years apart that ended up, meshing together. Like, okay, that's what that was. But other times, it might, somebody might even tell you. So, good friend of mine, Rob Guttrow, he's a psychic medium. He does a lot with pet investigations. He would be one to get on your show too. He does, or he does pet communication stuff like that. But he also is a psychic medium. And he has a fascinating story where his mother had already, or his mother was still alive. His aunt, his mother's sister, had passed, but she had appeared to him, but only as a shadow for him to deliver a message from her to his mother. So it's like, okay, there's a lot more information there. This one has identified herself, but when they're just hanging out in the corner or they just kind of walk down the hall, it becomes a lot tougher because you need more information. Okay, what's going on? Does the incident repeat? And if it does repeat, okay, what are some things that are similar from the first incident to the second incident? Did they walk into a particular room? Is that a room it always goes into? Are they hanging out near a particular object? All these different things you have to kind of start asking. So hopefully you're able to see it more than one time. Some people are like, I don't want to see it more than one time. It spooks me. Okay, well then I might not be able to tell you what it is based on the one time you saw it. So as
Yeah.
much information as you can get is helpful.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I have had that same, you touched on it. I've had that same view. It's evolving over the years. That it started with the psychedelic realm where I would hear a lot of people saying they have terrible experiences and saw terrible things, and I would often say it's like I would give the analogy of it's like a neighborhood. Like you can go
Mhm.
into a neighborhood and there's some really bad people that will rob you, do all sorts of things to you. And then there's also some people that are just really good. And then there's some people who don't care that you're in the neighborhood. They're like, okay,
Right.
there's just a guy walking through. So yeah, I definitely get that. I would love to know how to differentiate though. That would
Yeah,
be cool.
again, a situation. There are ones that are good. And I tell some of those stories within A Walk in the Shadows. So there's one particular woman, her her son, when he was very, very small, he was constantly ill. He had some different medical issues. And they were trying to figure out what in the world was going on with him. And she kept seeing this shadow go into his room different times a day. And she'd be sitting there watching TV, and all of a sudden she'd see the shadow, go into his room. So she was thinking at that time it was a harbinger of death. He's, we can't get this issue fixed. He might die. So this one time they're at the at the hospital. They're at, visiting the doctor, getting the checkup, trying to figure out what's going on. And the doctor was going to, again, run the same battery of tests that they have been. But then all of a sudden, as he was about to send them on their way, he kind of just stopped and he turned his head as if somebody was talking in his ear. And they turned back to them and said, you know what? Let's run this other battery of tests. And they did. And they found out that, oh, he'd been misdiagnosed this whole time. They figured out what was wrong with him. It was treatable. Child is fine. The black shadow stopped showing up. In the mother's words, not mine, this isn't my idea about the situation. I didn't live it. She lived it. But in her words, she believes that that shadow, whatever that being was in that doctor's office at that time, even though they couldn't see it. She believes it was there and whispered into the doctor's ear the tests to run.
That's interesting. That's very interesting, because I'm somebody who fully believes, like, I mean, something pushes us to do certain things. Yeah, I would love to know the doctor's perspective on that.
Yeah.
Like what because
And what was
sometimes,
his experience in it? Yeah.
yeah, because sometimes the nudges, the synchronicities, whatever you want to
Mhm.
call them, they come as these very faint whispers that we can't even pick up on, and
Right.
usually just kind of go, oh, it's just an idea that came to my head. But sometimes where the
How did
idea
that idea
leads,
get in there? Yeah.
yeah, where the idea leads, it's like
Mhm.
how could that have just been something that just popped into your head and led to all this,
Right.
like you going to that girl's house, how did that was just a thing that you just want, like, why did she bring that up? And then that your friend touches the thing, and
Yeah, it was just kind of random in the conversation, right? And then all of a sudden, all of this happens. Yeah.
yeah, there's so many things like that. That's very interesting. I gotta learn, I guess, discernment. In Christianity, they talk about discernment
Right.
all the
If
time,
it's
having
discernment. Yeah.
being able to discern what's what. I guess that's a big thing, because a lot of times, and I'm guilty the same way that guy in Ancient Aliens, he goes aliens. I go demons. I'm like demons. That's what this was.
But yeah,
That's
I
the
mean,
first thing I thought of.
sure, it could be. It could also be aliens. Some of these shadows can be extraterrestrials too. So it could be any of them.
Yes, as you start talking about interdimensional. Now, is there any link that you've seen to the occult and the shadow people, like people within the occult realm trying to summon these beings for their own, pursuit of power or material or whatever?
Yeah, there are people who do that, and they're trying to summon. I mean, it goes both ways because you have people, yes, that are trying to summon beings and entities to do more nefarious things. That does happen. But then you also have people that try to summon just to have some sort of communication that, maybe they believe that from this being that they're going to summon, they're going to get some sort of guidance. Uh, the When I mentioned Alu earlier on as being like this, shadow entity from ancient Sumer, well, they had back then, quote unquote, good demons and bad demons. So Alu was considered a bad demon, or Udug is the term they used. Well, what the priests back then would try to do is they would try to summon a good Udug to battle off Alu. So yeah, people do try to summon some of these different beings and entities, and a lot of people will say things like, well, don't use a Ouija board because you're going to summon demons, and really a it's a spirit communication device. So on paranormal investigations, most times we're using digital audio recorders and trying to communicate, get EVPs and that sort of thing. It's really the same concept, except I'm using a little, digital recorder rather than a Ouija board. It's your intent. What's your intent behind what you are trying to do? If you're just trying to talk with the former owner of this house, whether it's through a digital audio recorder or a Ouija board, or you've got some other device to try to communicate, fine. But if you're using that to try to summon something dark and nefarious, well, that's something else. And
Yeah.
and actually, when I've seen, so I've heard a lot of those stories up because I went down the rabbit hole of Ouija boards, where I've seen it's kind of a common story where I've seen people get in trouble with them is, and not trying to be sexist at all, but I've heard this story so many times from so many people. It's the typical story. Young girls at a slumber party, and they've got the Ouija board, and they're trying to communicate. But when they think that they have something, or maybe one of the girls is fooling the other,
True.
they're asking things, does Bobby or Jimmy like me, or that sort of thing, right? And could you imagine though? Because this is a device that the intent is to talk to spirit or some sort of being or entity. Could you imagine being a spirit or a being or an entity coming into the room? Because you start using it, it's kind of like this light going off in the other realm, and they see that, oh, somebody's down here trying to talk. Well, let me come down here and talk. And then all of a sudden you've got this gaggle of girls, or could even be a gaggle of boys, and they're being silly and goofy and want to know which person likes me and all that sort of thing. And maybe you showed up to try to like really communicate, and now you're frustrated because this is ridiculous. And that's where I've heard the stories of we were playing around with the Ouija board and suddenly the radio gets thrown across the room. Well, the person showed up to talk and you're being goofy. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I know from the psychedelic realm, psychedelics will throw you across the room if you approach them with too much recklessness and recreation. You have to approach it with a lot of respect and reverence.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing that you're touching on here. That would be very you're a being that's existed for thousands of years. You come down because you've been summoned, and only like witches and occultists and who are very seasoned, they summon you, and then you come down and it's Becky, and she's like, "This Bobby like me?" And he's just like,
Yeah, exactly.
he's like, "Are you guys serious right now?
You've got to be kidding me. But yeah,
I'm gonna show you guys some stuff right now. Okay, I'm throwing
Yeah.
this thing, throwing that thing. Make sure you guys never do this again, because you guys are not the people to be doing this." That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, I could see that. And you're right. You're 100% right. I mean, my brother got in trouble with a Ouija board, and again, it was a girl that he liked that had it and wanted to play with it. And, then they had a whole bunch of things happen, and yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, and I like the analogy you said that a light goes off. See, this is why a lot of the times I always tell people in my channel they can do whatever they want to do. Like yesterday I was talking about astral projection. That episode will come out today, and you can do whatever you want, but you do have to realize that when you do this, if you're not trained and you don't really know what you're doing, you kind of are putting yourself out there in a very wild way. And whatever is out there. I did give the analogy of a neighborhood. Like, you think that you're just in your house, you think you're in your neighborhood, and you live in a nice suburb, but the spiritual realm where you are could be like the hood. You don't know what's there. It could be a bunch of wild, different types of entities running around. There could be good ones, there could be bad ones, but when you decide to do something like that, you're showing yourself as being very open.
Yeah.
And you just don't know what's going to happen with that. It could be very good. You could be very lucky. One time I was in Cuba and I was blackout drunk, and I wandered into the regular city of Cuba, just wandering around completely drunk. And they led me back to my resort. I'm sure that doesn't happen with everybody.
Probably
I was lucky.
not. Yeah.
I was very, very lucky. They just
Could have gotten yourself kidnapped, and
yeah. There's a whole bunch of things that could have happened to me. I was lucky. I wouldn't say do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say try that out,
It's a pretty good analogy, because this world that we see and we experience, this is the 3D world. So we are this starts getting into more of the discussion on dimensions and time and all that. We are a fourth dimensional consciousness in time that is in a 3-dimensional body. So our experience of reality is time in this 3D world. And that's what we have access to, the fourth dimension and lower. So, or we are able to access from the fourth dimension everything that's below ours. But there are, at least according to our physics, up to 11 hyperspatial dimensions, 0 through 10. So those other ones, 5, 6, 7, 8, and beyond, they're there, they exist. There are other beings and entities that are going to live in those other dimensions, and some scientists argue that they're even more than that. But yeah, we are this fourth dimensional experience that we're having right now, yeah, it's a good analogy. That's our neighborhood. That's what we're used to. That's our home. But once we start venturing into those other worlds, and yeah, I'm all for, discovering and charting new frontiers. But yeah, you do have, there is a degree of caution that you should take when you start going into those other realms, because it is, especially your first time in there, uncharted waters for you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Very interesting stuff, man. I guess with shadow people, I guess we can move on. I'm thinking I love the term interdimensional. I love that you're into
Mhm.
that. But I guess would portals tie kind of ties into that, yes?
Yeah,
Okay, so let's get
absolutely.
into portals. Let's get into First off, I guess a good transition point would be: is there a connection between portals and shadow people?
Yeah, I think some shadow people, again, depending on what they are, if they are some sort of interdimensional being or an extraterrestrial or something like that, then yeah, they could certainly be using a portal or what we'd call a Stargate to move into our plane of existence. So that could be across the cosmos. That could be just here on Earth, moving from one dimension to another. But yeah, a portal would be a means to use that. And Stargate is really just an intelligent being's ability to take a portal and use it for their own will, and to be able to use it at will.
Okay, so then are you saying a portal would be more random and then a Stargate would be more directed?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in fact, even science recognizes that we have randomly occurring portals in nature. So, and a lot of these are outside the planet. They call them X points, and this is where the Earth's magnetism interacts with the solar wind. And these portals, they've had satellites up there for 10 years now studying these things, and there's no predictive model for it. All they can do is watch and observe, and all of a sudden one opens up, and they have no idea what size it's going to open up to until it does. They have no idea how long it's going to stay open until it closes. And these particular portals are basically allowing the protons and electrons from the sun, from the solar wind, to enter into our atmosphere much quicker. But keep in mind that the solar wind and the Earth's magnetism are always interacting up until we get to ground level. So these things could be opening all over the place. And you have, all kinds of, reports of, people like disappearing in the woods. They'll be walking alongside their buddy, and all of a sudden the buddy turns and their friend is gone. Where'd they go? What happened? And they're just missing. You have some people that actually make it back and will tell the craziest stories, like, well, yeah, I was walking along the path in the woods, heard a sound off the side of the path, took 2 steps off the path to take a look, and well, I couldn't find what was making the noise, turned back around to get on the path, and all of a sudden the path is gone and they're lost in the woods. You're like, what in the world? What happened? So a lot of these ideas of what may have happened to them is, they may have stepped into some sort of portal. And then when you look at things like the UFO abductions, people report the time loss, or they're in this, maybe they're on the mothership, or they're in this other world with the ETs, and time is just working differently, where they think 5 minutes has gone by, they show back up and it's been days. And you have stories like that go back all the way, like hundreds of years ago, and they're very, very similar stories to like the fairy realm, where people were getting lost into the fairy circles, and they'd come back and days have passed, and like, what happened to you? So or another one, Hoyobacha Forest in Romania, where the little 5-year-old girl walked off into the woods, and nobody saw her again. Everybody's wondering what in the world happened to her. 5 years later, she walks out of the woods, still at 5 years old. So she should have aged
Wow.
to 10, but no, she walked out at 5 years later. So yeah, just stories like that let you know, okay, yeah, something's going on here. And those are more like randomly occurring portals.
That happened. Where did that happen? In Romania?
Romania, Hoyobacha Forest. Yeah, the whole reason why it's named Hoyobacha is there was a young boy named Bachu. He was a shepherd. He had a flock of 200 sheep, and he took it into the woods. He was trying to get to the next town or whatever the heck he was doing, the sheep. And They all disappeared, all of them. It's a really interesting anomalous area. So that in the middle of the forest is this clearing where nothing grows. It's completely barren. Nothing can grow there. I
Huh.
think it's maybe like maybe there's an old meteorite or something like that that's underground. It's a highly magnetic area, and I believe that's what's going on there. Is the Earth's magnetism is really heightened right there, and is creating these different things that happen, like people randomly going missing, 200 sheep going missing, which would be back we're talking like 1,000 years ago. Sheep were like money,
Yeah.
valuable commodity. So somebody would notice sheep and you know
Yeah.
that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But yeah, so that's in Romania.
I got to look into that. That sounds wild. You know, when I hear stuff like that, you're kind of talking about what we all know to be like the Bermuda Triangle
Yeah,
kind of thing, just random disappearances. Would that be an example of, well, magnetism or a portal or?
yeah. I mean, what we're talking about, and this is a lot of the work that I did for Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. So another show I was on was the Alaska Triangle, which was on Travel Channel. And what it comes down to is the magnetism of the Earth's core. It's a spinning molten ball of iron, and as it spins like that, it creates the Earth's electromagnetic field, which of course protects us from the sun. So it's a good thing that we have this. But as it's rising up through the planet and it's passing through the mantle and the crust, it's interacting with different metals and minerals, and depending on the type of metal or mineral it interacts with and the quantity of it, it creates these different localized electromagnetic fields. So, yeah, a place like the Bermuda Triangle or the Alaska Triangle, or you hear of like the portals and vortices in Sedona and all these other places, Skinwalker Ranch. That's what's going on here. Is there's something there in the ground that the Earth's magnetism is interacting with and creating these different anomalies. So yeah, Bermuda Triangle, one of the more fascinating stories from there. Of course, everybody is familiar with like Flight 19 that went completely missing. Even one of the search and rescue planes went missing. But Bruce Gernon in the 1970s, flying with his father from, I think it was Andros Island, headed back toward Fort Lauderdale, or it might have been Miami. Well, he ended up all of a sudden at Miami. So basically, it was an electronic fog. We call it an electronic fog, but this large cloud that built up in front of him, and there was like this funnel. And he knew, at least from all of his training, don't fly into the cloud itself, especially with all the crazy electrical activity that's going on in it. Fly through the funnel, and he did. And all of a sudden, a trip that was supposed to take him like an hour and a half took him like a half an hour. It was like all of a sudden, boom, he comes out on the other side. There's Miami. Like, I'm not supposed to be here yet. So he like skipped ahead in time through some sort of portal or something that formed up in the sky.
That's very interesting. I mean, there was I guess that's more of a UFO story. There was the Mexican pilot that kind of had the same thing where the plane was taken over and apparently he was taken over
Yeah.
by UFOs
Yeah. They
and
all kind of converged on him like that. Yeah.
and they the first time it happened, they converged. The first pilot it happened to, they came up on his wings and then I think the backside as well, and then he couldn't
Mhm.
move. The second
Right.
person had more of a fog that happened, and then he kind of just lost a bunch of time. And then the person on the other end, I guess dispatch, whatever you'd call it,
Yeah.
they said they were talking to him the whole time, and that yeah, he was basically being used as a microphone for these UFOs. But
Yeah.
it's just the same thing happened with that same loss in time. It's like where he was and how much gas he had used didn't make any sense. It's like he should
Right.
have used
Exactly.
way more. He should have been out of gas already where he was, but he wasn't. It was just very odd.
Yeah, and that's what Bruce tries to show. He's like, look, I still have my fuel logs from then. Here he's like, I got the receipts.
Wow. That's very interesting. Okay. Well, actually, I completely forgot. We were supposed to front load this. I just wanted to make sure. We were so
Yeah,
smart.
now that
Like
we're an hour into it. Oh yeah, by the way,
we
there's a website.
I lost
We
time.
lost time.
I looked at it. It was like 18 minutes in, and now all of a sudden it's 59 minutes in. But just to show your website here, I just want people to be able to see Portals to the Stars latest release. You can get that right now. We got connected to universal portals, special features, a shadow dimension, like you talked about, whole bunch of books. Incredible. I can't even write an essay. So when I see people writing books like this, it's absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Obviously, you've been to Egypt there,
Mhm.
events
Yeah,
scheduled. So
and we're going back in November. There's still a week left for people to sign up if they want to join us.
really,
Yeah. Yeah, the cutoff is September 11th, but yep, we're going November 11th to the 23rd. So, and we'll be back in time for Thanksgiving. But yeah, it's a yearly tour, Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour, where we actually go to the locations that where you actually see the Stargates. It's right there, written in plain sight. It's actually labeled Stargate. It's pretty cut and dry. But we have some extras that we're throwing in there. Like, this is the first year we're going to the Egyptian labyrinth at Hawara. So this is one of the places where you've probably seen a lot of the scans that have been coming out lately. The Giza Plateau. Hawara is another one where those scans of huge underground structures are coming out of. And of course, we will be up there at the Giza Plateau. We get 2 hours just ourselves, our own group, inside the Great Pyramid, which is incredible. And all the chambers are opened up to us, and we can check them all out.
I'm skipping a bunch of my questions, but what do you think was going on with these pyramids? What do you think that was?
So yeah, there's a lot of different ideas and theories as to what was going on with it. Christopher Dunn has a lot of great work on like the Giza power plant theory, and I'm kind of on board with that. And even science has shown that the Great Pyramid of Giza is harnessing energy from the ground and storing it within its chambers. That was a scan that came out like 8 years ago when when science actually showed, yeah, that's true. And then a year or two ago, a radar studies from, of all places, China, was showing that balls of plasma are forming over the Great Pyramid. So there's definitely something very, very energetic about it. So if it was some sort of power plant, when we think of power plant, we immediately go to, turn on the lights and everything like that. And I don't think that's what they're using it for. There's no evidence to show that they had electric lighting or anything like that. People point to like the Dendara light bulbs, which is not really a light bulb. Basically, it's a story of creation, but our modern context looks at, that looks like an incandescent light bulb. It's not. But what I think that the energy was being used for, you have to think of what Egypt was back then. Primarily it was a agricultural society. The most important thing for the ancient Egyptians was during the Nile inundation season was for that rich black soil to fertilize the land, and they had to plant the crops and harvest the crops and then store them, because it's a desert country. They are only able to cultivate 7% of their land. The other 93% is desert. So the most important thing to them was their agriculture. So I believe what part of the function of this quote unquote power plant was, for one, I think it was to help raise the energetic vibration of the people. The people are feeling good about themselves. They're going to be happy doing their work, and whatever that is, especially if it's going to be hard work like agriculture. The second thing, I think it was to help increase the crops. So we do things today to try to increase crop output, which, unfortunately we use chemicals for that these days, which is not good. But back then, I believe that they were using the earth energy to increase the output of their crops and to have a more bountiful crop.
Interesting. I've never heard that theory before. I mean that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're saying it's a desert country, but as far back as ancient Egypt goes, wasn't it green at that time, or was that even further back?
Well, that would be further back. So you'd have to go back to like the Younger Dryas era. So before that, and that's where like a lot of the like when the Sphinx got redated in the early 1990s, right? John Anthony West, Robert Schoch, when they were redating the Sphinx to at least 10,000 years or further back. And a lot of people threw up their arms about that. The traditional archaeological community, but there's a lot of evidence to show that geologically it looks like it dates back to that period of time. And back then, and the reason why They think that it's older is because of the water runoff, the channeling that's in the Sphinx enclosure that could only be done by water. Well, it was you know, about 10,000, well, let's see, 9600 BC and earlier, that climate would have existed. And all of a sudden you had 9600 BC, this extreme warming trend that really dried out the land. And people argue as to what that was. And this is where we talk about the great cataclysm, whether that was the great deluge, the flood, or something else that happened. So was it a comet impact? Was it a massive solar flare? Something happened that started melting the ice and taking us out of that era, because before then we were in like ice age and all that. So yeah, once it started to warm up, then that's when Egypt started becoming more arid.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that it's interesting about crops. Like I don't know. I don't know what it could possibly be for, because it's true. I am on the side of it being some kind of power device. I do think that. I never even thought of what was the energy used for. I never
Yeah.
thought of that. Yeah, and that's actually a great point. So it could be crops, could be, and that very interesting to think of it possibly being the people, or even possibly being the pharaoh, because pharaohs were looked at as these, I don't know, I want to say like godlike, like they had a tremendous amount of energy and ability, and even older pharaohs were kept and preserved, and the ancient Egypts had this weird it was like this ritual called the opening of the mouth, where they said they could keep a pharaoh's mouth open, and even after he passed, his energy could come back and they could still hear him audibly give instructions on certain things.
Well, yeah, and that's why you had a lot of things like the false doors within the tombs, and you had the Ka statue. So the Ka was which was one of the parts of the soul, could inhabit the statue, walk around the tomb if it wanted to, use the door to move from here to the constellation of Orion. And when it comes to the kings, yeah, it was believed that they became the stars out there in the heavens, and it's really really interesting because this connection. Okay, we're headed to Orion, but if you're a king, you become a star. Well, one of the things that they, technically could not have possibly have known if we believe that they had very, very, very primitive means to observe astronomy. There's the Orion Nebula that's up there in the constellation of Orion that you can't see unless with very, very powerful telescopes. So this idea, this in the Orion Nebula is a huge creator of stars. So it's like, okay, is that just irony, or did they somehow know that there was the Orion Nebula up there that was creating these stars? And this is where the ancient Egyptians believe that they originally came from. When we talk about the afterlife journey, they never really looked at it as the afterlife. This whole journey to the Duat, they just looked at it as it's another part of life. You're losing the 3D body, and your consciousness is you're headed back home to Orion.
Yes. I have heard that they talk about being tested as they journey through the galaxy. They talk about passing away, and there being these tests that they're getting, these questions that they're given as
Right.
they go back to, I guess, where they believe they're from. I didn't know that.
Yeah, their journey with Anubis, and Anubis gets a bad rap, just like the Grim Reaper gets a bad rap, or the because he's basically like the journeyman over the river Styx, right? He's, he's taking you on the journey. He's your guide to get to there, and yeah, you're going through these different tests. You go through the halls of Amenti with Anubis, and you're performing all these different tests. And then you end up in front of Mott, and she's got the scales, right? So it's these concepts and ideas that we actually see throughout, pretty much most of the cultures on Earth talking about these different concepts. But in Egypt, it's Anubis and Mott, and headed off to Orion.
Yeah. I talked to a hospice nurse just the other week, and I've really changed my thought process on passing away, because it is usually just thought of this terrible experience. But the more you hear about it, the more you confront it, the more you hear about it, hear these stories, and hear these cultures, how they thought of it, not just the ancient Egyptians, but also a lot of native cultures. They all refer to it as a waking up. They
Yeah.
all refer to it as you're just going to the next stage. Like, it doesn't stop. You're just not going to be this anymore. And that's just, I guess, so because we're so tethered to the solid, to the matter, that it's unfathomable to not be this. But they look at it as this waking up. And the hospice nurse even told me this beautiful story where the veil was getting so thin for one of these people that was passing away, this woman, that she was having the visions and everything like that they all tend to have in
Mhm.
hospice. And she even looked and she's like, am I gonna need these? It's getting that thin where she's like, am I
Yeah.
gonna need these? And she's like, am I gonna need this? And her daughter thought she was talking about like her gown or whatever. And she's like, no, no, no. She's like, started tugging at her skin. She's like, am I gonna need this? And like, it was getting to the point where she realized, she's like, I'm not even gonna need this body.
Right.
So it's like, I've completely shifted my thought I was very terrified of death before, but I'm starting to
Yeah.
realize that it's not quite what people have been informed it is.
Right, exactly. Well, we've been, a lot of our society has been inundated with these ideas of heaven and hell, and like you're going one place, you're going to the other, and if you don't adhere to these rules and standards, then you're going to a place that's you're going to burn for the rest of eternity. So it's kind of very dark and gruesome, fire and brimstone sort of stuff. But when you get into a lot of other cultures and belief systems and things like this, it's like, well, this can actually be a very, very beautiful journey. A lot of these cultures talk about, well, even Christianity does talk about preparing for the next world. You have the ideas of reincarnation, that we go to a home world and then we come back, and we live out another life, but we spend some time up there and these sorts of things. So this is stuff that I start talking about when I get into the idea of like, are we living in a simulated universe, which I talk about in a couple of my different books. And I believe to a degree that we are, because even though they didn't use the word simulation, the concepts that our world's religions have had are very, very similar in nature. That, yeah, we are, we are a consciousness, we are a soul that's in this, flesh and blood body. And when we lose this, we're going someplace else. And even, there are some scientists these days that actually do believe that. You have Roger Penrose, Stuart Hemroff, and their concepts and ideas of the consciousness residing in, they say it's in the microtubules in the brain. And then when the body passes, the consciousness moves on to the cosmos. Now, when asked, well, where in the cosmos does it go? They're like, we don't know. We can't answer that one. But it's like, science is starting to catch up to what a lot of spiritual customs have been talking about for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really interesting to see. I mean, even I didn't know if you're into the simulation theory. I
Hmm.
really do think it is. I think I think it is, and I think it's being told in the Bible and in the Quran and like in scripture. It's kind of telling you that it is. I think what happens with simulation theory, I've been actually working on a video I was going to do of this. I think the language is kind of been lost,
Yeah.
right? Religion has been very demonized. There's a lot of people who take it for their own, and they become very dogmatic, and they
Mhm.
lord it over people and things like that. They put themselves above people, and that's soured a lot of society towards a
Yeah.
lot of religion. But the thing is, when you look at it, like I was talking to someone named Dan Goler. He originated this test called the red laser experiment, where you take DMT, you look at this laser that's plastered on a wall, and you can almost see the code. It looks like the
Mhm.
code of the Matrix. Everybody
Yeah.
sees it. It looks very, very Sanskrit, very ancient. Um, but he talks about it, his experience. He says
Mhm.
that there's these administrators that are outside the simulation, right?
Sure.
And I think what happens in the world, especially when you're soured on religion, is that you don't want to hear about angels and demons and God and the devil. So when you hear the term administrator, it's a little more calming. So you're like, I can get with
It
some.
is. Yeah. Or
That's
if,
so. Go
yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, or if you're thinking of it from, because a lot of times when we talk about simulation theory, we think of it in context of either, like you said, the Matrix, or a video game. So yeah, administrator is kind of a good part, or a game master. That
Yes.
comes in, and you might not, be able to see them, but they're there, and they're kind of watching, how everybody's playing out within, the game environment and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's necessarily a computer simulation that we're in. And I know a lot of simulation theorists are on that bandwagon,
Yeah.
primarily because of the Matrix movies. And it's like, okay, you can't take that at face value, that it is a computer simulation. The concepts and ideas are there, and the concepts and ideas of it have been embedded within spiritual texts for thousands of years, like I was talking about before, preparing for the next world, or the idea of reincarnation, and all these things. But I believe that it's something more maybe biological or organic. We go down the computer road, yeah, because of the Matrix, and because that's the height of our technology right now.
That too.
We're always going to take it to whatever the height of our technology is today. Well, hundreds of years from now, the technology is going to be much, much further. So, those descendants of ours are going to believe, no, it's that technology that the simulation is created from. But I think it's just something that our minds can't quite conceive. But I think it's something very, very natural, and not an artificial computer system.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's being told. It's in these religious texts, even Eastern. They keep
Mhm.
talking about it. They keep talking about. I forget if it's Hinduism, but they talk about. They're kind of referencing life being a projection, and I
Okay,
think they
yeah.
even refer to your body as being clothing. So they're talking about this whole thing being a projection. They're talking about preparing for the other world. It sounds like, more than, like, not quite a computer program, but a dimensional type of thing. Like you were just talking about the fourth
Right.
dimension, fifth
Yeah.
dimension. It seems like it's a dimensional thing. And this earthly realm seems to be, you know, a lot of a training ground where you have your free will, you have access to do evil, you have access to do good, you have access to just live a regular life and not care about much of that stuff either way.
Mhm.
But it seems like we're constantly being trained and pulled towards different decisions. And yeah, like that, it just seems like
Right.
that's mostly what is going on right now. And when you do ascend to the next dimension or go lower, forget about heaven and hell, just think about, again, dimensions. Like whether
Yep.
you go lower or you go higher, there you're either going to go back or you're going to be stuck there, right? A lot of people who do go to the fourth dimension in near death experiences, they all never want to come back. They all
Right.
report never wanting to leave that place and being upset that they had to come back. So I don't know. It's
Yeah.
very
And, well,
interesting.
and yeah, and a simulation is, by definition, it's something that we have assimilated. That's something that we have put together in order to learn something, whether it's to advance a skill. Just it doesn't have to be a computer game. Just take like a flight simulator. You log into the flight simulator, you're there learning a skill as if you're actually in an airplane. And then you log out and you kind of go back to your world. So yeah, and that's exactly what that is. And our religious texts are talking about it. They're just not using the term simulation. And yeah, going on to which dimension is it? Again, we're a fourth dimensional consciousness inside a third dimensional body. So is it the fifth dimension? Is it the sixth? Is it the seventh? Is it something even further beyond all of that we haven't really been able to comprehend yet? We're not sure on that part of it, but it is. I mean, what would you call that? Extra dimensional?
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly it, right? So when I hear about the simulation theory, I like it. I really do like it.
Mhm.
But I think in a way it's just there's so many things that we talk about today that they were talking about hundreds of years ago. And it's like
Yep.
the language is just so different.
It's
And it
just in a
seems like,
different context. Yep.
yeah, it seems like simulation is a lot of that. It's taking a very religious concept and it's
Mhm.
trying to make it as sterile and also with the simulation theory, it versus religion. It doesn't alienate anybody.
Right. Well,
Nobody
and also think of that. So take it right back around to shadow people. You mentioned like the administrators or game masters before. That's one of the things I postulate in the book. If we are in a simulated universe, is that what some of the shadows that we see are, that are watching and observing us? They're like taking notes. How is this person doing?
Mm. Very interesting. Yeah, right. I mean, but again, even as you say that, it's like, isn't that what they say angels are doing? Isn't that what they're saying? Demons,
Mhm.
or what's called it's a demon that's called a familiar. It's very
Yeah.
familiar with you. It's been with you. It's been in your family and around your family for generations, and it looks at you and it watches what you do. And they say angels do the exact same thing, right? It's like, I don't know. I always say, when it comes to this part of like a conversation, it's like, I feel like all of it is so much bigger than we can imagine.
It is.
It
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
much bigger.
We're just touching the iceberg here. So let's just tip the iceberg. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's why the people who have near death experiences, like one that was so profound for me that I saw, I played for my audience, was this firefighter, and he passes and he starts seeing all these orbs, and
Okay.
he's traveling through this realm of orbs. And the one thing that he said was, he's like, I can't believe I thought I was that guy with that wife and that life. He's like, I can't believe I thought that was real. He's like, this is what's real. And he was like
Interesting.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
waking up to that. And then he went to this realm where there were friends and administrators.
Hmm.
So he had these three guys come up to him, and they were laughing because they're like, he doesn't remember. They're laughing
Right.
because he doesn't remember everything yet. They're like, do you recognize us? Do you? And he was like, who are you guys? And they're just laughing. They're like, oh, this is hilarious. This guy doesn't know it's like seeing your friend after he's blackout drunk, and you're like, you remember what you did last night? You
Right.
remember?
Right. The hangover.
And he's just like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
And then he said this other bigger, seemed like an administrator, very shadowy type of person, kind
Hmm.
of staticky, came up to him, and he was like, do we do a life review now? And he's like, sure. He's like, we can do that. And they sat down and they talked about life, and the administrator person was like, now you have to go back. And he's like, I'm not going back. He's like, these people are my brothers. He's like, I love these people. I love it here. He's like, there's no need for me to go back. Everybody will be fine back where I was.
Hmm.
And the shadow guy was just kind of laughing, and he's just like, you have to go back. Like, you're going back now. And then that whole thing just kind of staticked in and out like an old
Yeah.
TV. And then the next thing you know, he's just back in his body. But
Wow.
yeah, there's
That's
some
incredible. Yeah.
yeah, some wild experiences. It just makes you wonder. Because the aspect of all this just being clothing, this physical body being
Hmm.
clothing, I really am starting to resonate with that more and more
Yeah.
as time goes on. I think there's more to it, and I think we do choose to come back over and over again if we need to.
Yeah, I believe that we do that. That there are certain lessons or whatever it is that we need, something that we need to learn. That we're like, yeah, I need to go back down there to Earth and go through another life and learn these other lessons again. Absolutely.
I think it again. Like, I'm a big proponent of like psychedelics. I don't do them anymore, but I used to quite a bit. And you're kind of saying the same thing that people say every now and then. One of your buddies will be like, you know what? I think I need to have an experience again. I've been going
Yeah.
through some stuff and just got to get my head straight. I just want to go and just try and do some stuff, like, and that's it. And then he does it. And it could be a similar thing with that, where it's like, you know what? I'm just so bogged down in our fourth dimension and all this love and light. I got to get a perspective on heartbreak and emotions and grinding
Mhm.
and physical work. I have to experience that again. And then you
Yeah.
choose to go back, you never know. It's very interesting. But getting back to portals.
Yeah.
Getting back to portals. Are there, and I know that you have an example of this, okay? But I just want to say, are there any portals or stargates that maybe happened in the past, historically, biblically, like in that time, that we just don't realize that's what it was?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, there could be, a lot of different things. When you look at any of the times, oh, what is it? When Moses and Elijah showed up to Jesus. Um, something like that. That could very well be, how did they get there? Because there's this light, and here they come. Who's the third one on that? Because there are three of them. But in any case, yeah, a moment like that could certainly be some sort of portal or Stargate that they used. I threw out this video the other day in an article covering it because there was this discovery that came out here. They finally deciphered an inscription that was in an old mine in the Sinai area, and it had this. It was an inscription of Moses. Like, it talked about Moses twice within this inscription. Now, the mine goes back to the time of Amenemhat III, whose father, and they co-ruled together for 20 years. His father was one of the kings of Egypt that we call a Stargate king. He had the title of Stargate in conjunction with his name on a lot of different chambers inside different temples and things like that. So the interesting thing about this mine, so it was an old turquoise mine. Well, we go to the temple of Seti at Abydos, and there within that temple, you have the Hall of Ptah Soker, and at the end of that are two of the Stargate chambers. Well, on the walls in the Hall of Ptah Soker, they talk about and since you're into psychedelics, you'll like this. They talk about ingesting the monatomic white gold cakes before they enter into the Stargate chamber to have their experience. Well, that monatomic white gold came from quote unquote turquoise land in the Sinai. So I'm like drawing all these connections to, is Moses connected to Stargates? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's a very tenuous connection, but I took that a step further and I was like, well, let's think about the whole burning bush incident for a moment. Okay. Because it didn't actually burn. And we haven't really talked about this yet, even though we've been talking about portals, is I believe a lot of the glowing orbs that we see, these plasmoids that we see, are actually the portals themselves. When we talk about something like a wormhole, the Einstein-Rosen bridge or something like that, we always think of like this opening in space, this tunnel to connect from one point to another. The film Interstellar does a really good job of depicting this. It's not just going to be like a circle hanging out there in air. Circle is a two-dimensional object. Three-dimensional object is a sphere, which they called in that film a spherical hole. So I believe a lot of these glowing balls of light are actually the portals themselves. We've seen a lot of people have reported like UFOs and things like that going in and out of giant balls of light and things like that. So what was it? Not necessarily that the bush was burning, but there was actually some sort of portal, one of those giant balls of light that was right there by the bush. And was it the communication that Moses was receiving? Was it through that portal? Was it through that orb by this bush that happened to be right there?
I wonder. Well,
highly speculative, but it's
you
just
say it didn't burn. Is there like what like is it said in scripture that it didn't actually burn, or like there was fire?
That was,
and it wasn't burning?
Right. That was one of the fascinating aspects of the quote unquote burning bush, was that it was a bush that was on fire, but it didn't actually burn.
Okay. So I see where you're going with that.
Yeah. So again, highly speculative. I'm just trying to get people to think outside the box a little bit.
Exactly.
Look at these different ideas and concepts and what's actually possible. And yeah, that one might be wrong, but think about other things and strange occurrences that happen in our world, and maybe it's actually applicable to some of these other things.
Yeah. Huh. I wonder, because Moses also parted the Red Sea, right? Was that what it was? Because as soon as I saw this video, and when you were speculating that was the thing that came to mind. I saw your part in the video where you talked about the burning bush, but that was the thing that came to my mind, is that perhaps he was in front of this water. And then I thought this is where your video was going, that he was in front of this water and a portal came up. People could see right to the other side, and it looked like it was all parted because
it's possible. That's another great idea. Yeah.
Right. That's where I thought you were going with it. That's why I wanted to know a little bit about the burning bush, because I thought it was on fire. I'm like, I say I'm a Christian, but I'm not one of these Christians that like knows the Bible in and out. Like, I just got sober and saved like 3 years ago, so it's like I'm still working through that book.
Gotcha.
But yeah, very interesting stuff. Do you see any, when we're talking about these portals, again, going back to the occult, are you seeing anybody trying to, because I know Aleister Crowley was doing something in regards in the Boleskine house. He's trying to summon the kings of hell, apparently. the Duke of Hell or something like that. Do you see
Yeah,
anybody
he was
working towards that type of stuff?
yeah, he was doing all kinds of interesting things. Yeah, he was trying to summon things and performing like his version of magic. Of course, he wrote his own grimoires and all that sort of thing, which kind of listed all these different entities and beings and demons and all of that. So it's hard to kind of know sometimes what exactly he was up to, but he was up to a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So are you seeing anybody or have you heard of anyone in the occult trying to summon any type of trying to open or summon these portals? And also,
Oh,
aside from oh, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, no, I see or have have seen and heard of people doing that all the time, and just people that are kind of involved in that sort of thing. Yeah, we're gonna open a portal here. Just even and it might even be something that's not necessarily we're trying to summon demons or whatever. Although I know of people that have attempted to do that sort of thing. We're gonna make our circle on the ground and do all this stuff to
Mhm.
try to summon things. But I've also seen it go the other way, that we're going to all get into a circle and we're going to help this particular person that's here to cross over. I'm going to bring in the light and that sort of thing, and help the person cross over. So I've seen it go both ways.
Wow. Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting. So you've heard of people trying to do the whole demon summoning thing.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, I get yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's like, be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, true, true. That's really the way I look at it. A lot of people, when it comes to the whole new age thing, because I was deep in it myself when I was
Mhm.
younger, and you gotta really, again, even in things I don't agree with, you should still be approaching it with respect. There should still
Oh
be
yeah.
reverence there, and yeah, be careful what you ask for. Be careful when you're trying to connect to something, because it may not wanna just go back to what it was doing before. It might see you as like, "Okay, this person's a blip in this existence. I'm just gonna attach to this person for a while."
Yeah. Yeah. Might see you as dinner.
Yeah, right? An energetic type of dinner. Yeah, like
Yeah,
100%. So,
absolutely.
yeah, we're gonna jump over to UFOs. I'm gonna go to the washroom quickly. It's gonna be 1 second, and then we're gonna jump in, okay?
Okay. Sounds good. I can get another water then.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ah,
I'm just gonna grab another water real quick.
oh, yeah, do it, do it, do it.
All right.
I love podcasting, but I also have a small bladder, so it works
Ah,
against me sometimes. But, yeah, let's jump into UFOs. I
yeah.
guess, I guess based on all your research, everything you've done, what are you thinking about what these UFOs and UAPs are? Because it seems like the talk about it is really kicking up over the past, like, 10 years, I would say.
Yep.
What do you think all this is with your knowledge of portals and stargates and everything like that?
Again, I think we're talking about different phenomena. It just depends on the particular craft or anomaly that we're seeing, because some of them are straight up craft that people are seeing. Some of them are more of like the light anomaly kind, and so it causes us to wonder, okay, what exactly are these things? Are some of them actually beings from other planets that have come here in a craft and crashed? I think some are. And people are like, well, if they had that technology to get across the universe, how are they crashing on the planet? Operator error, system failure, it happens. You can have, I've worked in the IT industry for over 30 years, and you can have something humming along just great for years, and all of a sudden, it kind of craps out, and you're kind of scratching your head, why? Well, sometimes stuff happens, you know. So I think some of them are, but not all. I think the idea of a lot of these being interdimensional, or what we'd call like an ultra terrestrial beings and entities that are living like in another dimension alongside of us, is certainly possible. And we actually find a lot of that, going back to a lot of our ancient cultures kind of talk about these beings that, are living here alongside of us. And again, some of these craft that people are seeing are going in and out of, giant balls of light. So is that really, the portal or the Stargate to another place in the cosmos, or is it just taking them to another location alongside here? One of the interesting parallels that I've seen is, you have these old Hopi and Zuni legends, in the American Southwest, and basically the ancient Pueblans, where during the Great Cataclysm, and we find that Great Cataclysm story throughout all cultures, the humans were basically having to flee for their lives, and the ant people came along, or what people might refer to as like the praying mantis type people, or the mantoids, that sort of thing, is that type of being, said, hey, come with us and we will help protect you. And basically they took them into this underground world to preserve humanity for those years. And, or at least it seemed like years to the people. How long was it? By the time everything subsided, the people were allowed to go. And when you think about, okay, living in underground caves, if it's a flood or whatever's going on, a lot of that's going to fill up with water. But somehow everybody was safe and everybody was fine in whatever this world was. Some people call it like an inner Earth, and there are a lot of other stories about inner Earth being another dimension. So did they take them into that other dimension? Well, fast forward years and years and years later, 1945, we've just done the testing for the atomic bomb. Well, there was a report that came out of New Mexico. Two young boys had actually seen the crash of a UFO, material that ended up being taken away by the United States military. But they did see a couple of beings walking around, and it was, again, what they called the ant people. So it's like, okay, if the ant people were in this craft, was it one of these things where they were trying to get home? Maybe they're trying to get to the portal or Stargate to get back to their dimension, if they're from another dimension, if that's, where they took the humans thousands and thousands of years ago. Was there something from that fallout from the atomic bomb? Because this was right around the Trinity testing area. Was there something about that caused their craft to malfunction and caused it to crash, and they couldn't get back home? They couldn't get back to whatever gateway or portal that they were using to get back to their dimension.
Yeah. Huh. That's a lot. That's
food for thought.
Yeah, especially the inner Earth. Inner Earth, I love Hollow Earth. I love talking about it. I love Antarctica and it being down there, and Atlanteans and Lemurians being down there, coexisting, and there being an actual sun inside the Earth. I love the whole thing.
Well, I'll say this about all of that is I believe there are large cavernous spaces within the Earth that can house other civilizations. I also believe in the idea of an inner Earth as it being another dimension in which these live. The idea of like there being a sun in the middle of the Earth and all that, I can't get on board with that one.
Yeah, that's
a lot of aspects of it. I can, because some of those aspects do make some sense.
Yeah, that's what they say when you get deepest into it, and that's why there's the whole thing of the center of the Earth being molten lava. And that's our understanding of it, and then their understanding is that's actually their sun, apparently. But it's very odd because it's not actually it's hollow in the sense of it goes in and it's carved out. I don't know. It's just it's a wonderful.
Yeah, I've seen the old illustrations and all that. Yeah, and of course, Journey to the Center of the Earth and all that sort of thing. It's again, a lot of the ideas and concepts, because you have to think the way that the Earth is formed, with that molten lava and everything. You have old lava tubes and magma chambers and things like this underground. They're huge. They're absolutely massive. And so yeah, could some civilization get down in there and live and thrive? And sure, why not? That would make a lot of sense. That's something that figured out a way to be able to live within that environment deep underground.
Yeah, yeah. Who knows? I mean, even there could be a misunderstanding with somebody saying that there's another sun, and it could just be a heat source, right? And then that would
Well,
make
yeah, because you look at like thermal venting and all of that. So, like with Antarctica, you look at a like Lake Vostok. Okay, it's an under ice lake. It's bigger than Lake Ontario. It's huge,
wow.
and it has 2 miles of ice on top of it. Well, then how is all this water melted underneath, right? Well, that's
True.
because of the thermal venting underneath. So it's being kept warm under there. So it's when it comes to ideas of like Admiral Byrd, flying into the opening there, or the big cave, or whatever the heck he flew into at the South Pole, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden he's seeing green vegetation and all of this within there. Well, people are, well, how could it be green vegetation? It's Antarctica. Well, if this is an area that has that thermal venting that's keeping things warm, and we know that Antarctica, from our ice core samples, was an ancient jungle, then actually that kind of makes sense that you could have vegetation start growing as you got further into this cave as it started to warm up.
An ancient jungle, really?
Yeah. Yeah. And their ice core samples, they have found an ancient jungle in Antarctica. Yeah.
Oh, come on. That's amazing. Yeah, see, I that was one of my questions, asking you like what you think's going on with Antarctica, because I saw a video you had talking about a radio signal that's coming from there, a very strong signal, I
Yeah.
believe. And yeah, yeah, that makes so much sense that it was a wild jungle at some point. I mean, it just kind of makes sense that I because what do they call it? The poles shifting.
Yeah. The
So
pole shift or shift or flip, either
yeah.
one. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like because Admiral Byrd, I mean, that whole story to me, again, somebody who's a little biased with the Hollow Earth and thinking about all
Right.
that
Yeah.
stuff, like, I like that story. So when I hear that, I'm like, oh, there you go. There's a sign, but never actually had the thermal venting theory along with it
Mhm.
to actually make sense of the whole thing. That
Yeah.
actually makes it make a lot of
And
sense.
makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then there is this weird agreement with like seems like nations can't agree on anything, but they can all agree that there's places in the Antarctic that we can't go, that we're just not allowed to be.
Yeah.
It's very odd.
Yeah, there are some real off limits areas down there. It's like you can jump on a cruise and go down there and touch Antarctica, and you can take some flights across, but there's certain areas that are no fly zones that you can't, and certain areas that you're not going snowmobiling at or anything like that. And it's kind of interesting when you have you know us sitting at home looking at satellite footage of Antarctica, and we're finding structures that look like pyramids and walls and things like this, and then all of a sudden that gets scrubbed. It's like, what happened there? Why'd that get erased?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
So
mean, like you're talking about something that's like is hundreds of years because in the old maps you used to
yeah.
see a bunch of different things when regards to Antarctica, even like a little bit of a I wouldn't say a sphere, but maybe like a hole of sorts that they used to depict on old maps, and now that's gone as well.
Yeah, when you look at the old, it's interesting because there was this gap of hundreds of years in which Antarctica just disappeared from the maps, and then we quote unquote discovered it in like 1820, and it's
Mhm.
like, no, it was a rediscovery, because when you go back to the older maps, you find Antarctica on those, and yeah, it just it's kind of that European influence that they destroyed so much in their pious cleansing of anything that they deemed unholy, that a lot of these ancient texts and maps and all of these things got destroyed, and so knowledge got lost over time. But when you look at somebody like okay, Columbus sailing across, well, he didn't just blindly sail to the west.
Yeah,
They they knew something was out there. There was a knowledge that was passed down, stories that they may have even come down from the Vikings. Maybe there was a connection, a story, oh yeah, those Viking guys up there were talking about there are lands to the west,
yeah,
or well, that the Ottomans, that Piri Reis guy. There are stories that he had, drawn a map that had, some of this. Actually, I think Reis was after Columbus, but in any
Yeah,
case,
yeah, yeah.
but Reis had assembled his maps from, not just Columbus's, but older and older and older maps that predated him. So yeah, they had an inkling that something existed out there, and even though they may not have known specifically where to go, we're going to hit something.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I do think that. I think there's something going on there. When you talk about pyramids, it seems like every place has a pyramid.
Yeah,
Every continent, like it's just they're everywhere. I mean, even right down to I think even Ireland has one of sorts. It's not as extravagant as all the others, but
there's pyramids in Scotland. Yeah,
yeah,
you find them all over the world.
yeah,
Um,
it's very interesting.
Even here in America,
I was gonna
Cahokia
say,
Mounds,
where in America are there?
Cahokia Mounds in Illinois. So it's a mound pyramid, dirt, but it's considered the largest pyramid north of Mesoamerica.
Really?
Yep. It's just outside of St. Louis.
Just outside of St. Louis, and it's just fully formed? Is it grown over with vegetation or?
They've done a lot to restore, and there are other mounds in the area, but this one, the primary, they call it Monk's Mound because European monks came along and decided they were going to build a little their own little temple on top of it. But 1,000 years ago, this was used by the Mississippian tribes here in America, and they had built this thing up like a pyramid. They had their own temple on top of that. So there's some really interesting artist renditions of this that kind of show it fully formed. And at the time that it was in its full glory, you had a city like London was also being formed. There were actually more people in that Cahokia area than there were in London at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I didn't know that. I did not know that. I was gonna say, because I always say, I'm like, it feels like there's something hidden about America in general
Mhm.
because they don't, like where are our pyramids, right? But I
Yeah.
guess there is one. I guess there is one. I'll have to look into that. I want to see that. Definitely. Oh man. Okay. Yeah, we're jumping. What, since we're on our Antarctica, like, what do you think? What is this signal that you were referring to in your video? What is that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, they are picking up on radio signals coming up out of the ground that you'll like this with the hollowed earth theory, that look like they're coming out of the core of the earth. And they've noticed a lot of interesting things coming up out of the earth. So one of the things some years back was neutrinos coming up out of the earth without a source. Now they were down there testing neutrinos from space coming in, and these are help us to kind of map the universe, give us some data about the form, how solar systems and planets and the universe forms and all that sort of thing. So they're down there studying that, but all of a sudden they notice, wait a second, we're getting some from down there too. What in the world's that? And so they did some testing. They were finding neutrinos coming up out of the earth without a source. And so if you ever heard anything about parallel universe running in reverse time, this is where that came from. That these neutrinos, the way that they were acting, were indicative that there could be a parallel universe right alongside of ours running in reverse time. So it's this whole ancient idea of duality, as above so below, all of that. It's like right there. So they're still down there doing that sort of research. That now they're a little bit more focused on, okay, while we're doing this neutrinos research up there, let's also look for it down there in the ground. And while they're doing this additional research to try to figure out what in the world this is, oh, what in the world are these radio signals coming up out of here? Now this is different.
Oh wow.
And it's mind-boggling to them because under there, and yeah, there's all the ice, but there's miles and miles and miles of rock that radio signal can't permeate through, but yet it is. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Who knows what that could be? I mean, I do think I've always thought, it makes so much sense to be underground.
Yeah.
and especially with natural disasters and everything, kind of makes more sense. It's hard for us to wrap our head around it because the way we live, but it would make sense. I always give the analogy. I'm like, you don't sit on the roof of your house, like you get inside, like you like
Right.
it inside because when it
Yeah.
rains,
Unless, unless inside is totally flooded out and the only option you have is the roof. Yeah, you're going to stay in your house and bunker down somewhere. Yeah, the idea, and we find them. You look at like Darren Kuyu. That's a whole underground city, and I know that the traditional narrative, or one of them, they actually debate over this one, which is good. You need debate on it. But one of the hypotheses is that the people that built it were on the run from the Hittites. So somehow they're on the run. They're going to stop and take all this time to dig out this massive city complex. And I don't know how you do that while you're on the run, but okay. I tend to believe that it's left over from even further back. You mentioned the pole shift and the pole flip. Well, about 40,000 years ago, we had one of those, and the magnetic protection of the earth that we were talking about, hey, that does a great job of protecting us from the sun, got down to about 6%. So if you went outside, you're getting fried. And this is around the time that we find a lot of cave art, about 40,000 years ago. So people were hiding in caves because you go outside and you're just going to get lit up. So it makes sense that a lot of these underground cities and deep cavernous areas were created for humans to live, to protect themselves during that era, which lasted about 400 years.
Really? What is this era called?
Darren Kuyu, that is in Turkey.
Darren Kuyu, Turkey. I got to look into that. So you're seeing a lot of cave art around this time, and you said it was only 6% protected, like in regards to the sun. That's so interesting because you never really we always think of cavemen and we go, that's why there's cave art, because cavemen, and that's just the explanation. But that makes so much more sense that they had to be in caves. They had to be down there.
They had to, yeah. And if you look around France and Spain, you'll see a lot of those caves, and they all date around that era, about 40,000 years ago, when that would have happened. Yeah.
That's something to think about. And that can happen again. You never know.
It can. I mean, the pole is always shifting. Right now it's headed in a northwesterly direction. Actually, it looks like it's headed on its way to Siberia right now as far as the North Pole. But yeah, at any time it could start to shift. So when that happened 40,000 years ago, and it's interesting because they look at magnetic signatures from things like trees that may have actually lasted that long. They do find them in other objects that have been around that long. They're able to actually track the magnetic signature. So I don't know all the specific tests that they do to make that happen, but basically they were able to track this shift, like coming down through at that time, like through New York and what, it wasn't New York back then, but during that part of the country, and just kept going down until you had that complete shift. So, and that took that was a lot quicker. I'm trying to remember how long that took. It was like a matter of like months, they believe, for that flip to occur, and then there it was completely changed.
Wow. Maybe that's why all these billionaires are building bunkers and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them doing it. A lot of underground stuff around. Is it Wyoming? I think it's Wyoming. I think it's like Denver Airport as well. Like
Colorado has like NORAD and all of that. It's built into the mountain.
Yeah.
And then Utah has the huge NSA facility that's underground. So there's a lot of deep underground government structures.
Yeah. People have come forward, like construction people. They say enough room that 2 tractor trailers could go on either side. Like if it was like roads, 2 tractor trailers could be going this way and going the other way. So we'll see. Hopefully we're privy to some of that if anything happens. But
yeah, give us access.
But yeah, when it comes to Antarctica, overall, what do you think of its past? You think it was just you're saying it was a jungle? Do you think it was inhabited by people? And if so, why won't they tell us about it?
Yeah, well, because if they did, it would completely change the history books. And there is a certain narrative that they're trying to keep intact. Unfortunately, this idea of civilization built up and then fell, and then built up and fell. For whatever reason, they don't want that narrative. It has to be this nice, perfect line. Well, that's just not the way you know life works. It goes in these different cycles, and things will rise and they will fall, they will rise again and they will fall again. And yeah, to go to Antarctica and find a civilization that previously existed, I think one of the things they're looking for down there, being in ice, it's probably perfectly preserved, I believe, is the technology that did things like built the pyramids or moved massive stones like they did at Baalbek in the Trenethon. These things that we just don't even have the equipment today to be able to move. That I think that technology is probably there under the ice, maybe some sort of anti-gravity technology or something like that. That might be there, and they're on the hunt for it.
True. That would make that, yeah, I could definitely see that. And you're right about the whole they needing to just be like a straight line. They do kind of paint that because we are starting to see, whether it's archaeology or it's just someone wearing a tinfoil hat, everybody has this inkling that these natural disasters come. We see them come, maybe not in a devastating fashion for us, but we know that they happen. We know that they could wipe things away. We know that 100,000 years, if this all fell, in 100,000 years, it'd be nothing left. We all know that everything would be gone. These hard drives I have here, there'd just be nothing. So, I guess, it's interesting that they can't just
and then civilization reforms and takes a different path. And that's kind of one of the things when we talk about like the high technology of the ancients, it spooks a lot of people because they didn't have computers and cell phones. And no, they didn't. Their society grew up in a different direction. So they had superb engineering skills where they figured out a way, whether it was magnetism or magnetics or sound technology or whatever it was, to be able to move those huge blocks. They figured it out. And when their civilization fell for whatever reason, however it did, that technology was lost. And then when civilization rebuilt itself, it went in a different direction to where our technology, there are still wonderful things that we engineered, not like that. It went in a different direction, and it also went into a more highly technological era as well. So it grew up differently.
Yeah. I guess I was going to say it's like the hubris that there's no way that those primitive people had anything like we have. It seems like a lot of that thinking when it comes to this whole thing. We look at the ancient Egyptians and we say, okay, they were pretty smart. But everybody else,
they were pretty smart because of what they did. But we're still smarter. We have this tendency to be very, very arrogant, that we are like the supreme, because we are kind of at the top as far as life forms on this planet. And we tend to think that our modern society is, we've got it all right now. But 100 years ago, 150 years ago, they were talking about, science is pretty much maxed out. There might be a couple little things that that might get tweaked, that might help enhance it, but we're pretty much maxed out, and we can go. Look at us now. We're much further along than we were 150 years ago. So and so it also makes me kind of laugh when we start talking about the idea of extraterrestrials and life on other planets. You have stuff like the Fermi paradox that says, well, how in the world can we say that there's life out there on other planets when we haven't even discovered life on another planet yet? And I always laugh at that, because it again comes down to this very human arrogance that we have, that we forget that to the whole rest of the universe, we are the extraterrestrials.
True.
It comes out of, we are the extraterrestrials. So if you look at it from a universal wide idea, and you just look at the Milky Way galaxy. I mean, there are trillions of billions of galaxies out there. There are trillions of billions of stars in the Milky Way galaxy, right? Well, we know one of those stars in the Milky Way galaxy has life on it. That's us. Okay.
Yeah.
We know that. So now do the math and spread that out to the rest of the universe and try to do an approximation. And I mean, just the math will tell you that, yeah, the likelihood of there being life on other planets is extremely high. And we can kind of even give you a ballpark just off of one per galaxy. So, yeah, it's just this weird arrogance that we have that, we're the cream of the crop. And it's like, we've only been around 4.5 billion years, and the whole rest of the universe has like a 9 billion head start on us. Well, and there even might be changing that. Science was saying for a long time that the universe is 13.5 billion years old. But now there's other scientists that come along saying, we may have miscalculated that. It might actually be closer to 27 billion years. So that means, okay, the rest of the universe had even more time to develop technology and get ahead of us.
Slight miscalculation.
Yeah.
Slight miscalculation.
Oh, we were supposed to multiply by 2 over there. Whoops.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's I always think of all these other planets and stars and just I don't know, it's you can kind of do the same thing here. I'm sure at one point, like, to think that you're the only person, it's almost as arrogant as thinking you're the only person like on this one continent. Like, it's just here and there's no other life. And also, if there is other life, they're all morons in comparison to us. They have to be.
Of course.
Because we haven't seen
inferior. Yeah, the ancient Egyptians were inferior. Yeah,
it's funny
because they didn't have electric lighting and computers. Yeah,
because they didn't have cell phones. Because they didn't have cell phones that were rotting their brains. They didn't have AI that was going to slowly make them obsolete and take them out of the running for like the top species on the planet. That's how we know that they were too primitive.
Right.
It's funny.
Yeah, they have all these anthropomorphic characters all over their walls and their artwork and all that. They're cartoons, so it must have just they must have been children. Oh no, they're extremely smart about the universe.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to UFOs, what do you think about all the disclosure that's happening? Do you think that this is real? Do you think that this is put on? What do you think about all this?
So this is the way I look at it, is that I'm happy they're talking about it.
Yeah.
It got to the point where they could no longer just deny everything. People have been talking about all this phenomenon for decades and decades and decades. And, it seems like one of the issues I have is they really are only looking from like around the year 2004, like the last 25 years. It's like you realize there was like another 50 years before that in which, people were talking about, things that they were seeing and witnessing and experiencing. But yeah, we're going to ignore all that. We're just going to go from like the Tic Tac video and on or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's one issue that I already have, but they're at least talking about it, which is good. So it helps us in our field to kind of get past that stigmatism that everybody's crazy and insane and they're all kind of Fruit Loops or whatever, because we're talking extraterrestrials and UFOs. So that has helped to ease that stigma a little bit. I mean, some people still have it, but it's eased it a lot. And even our popular culture, our films have helped to ease that a little bit. People have become more, they've warmed up to the idea that there should be life out on other planets. It's a big, wide universe.
Yeah.
And we also have to keep in mind that it was a hard stigma for people to get past, that the universe is big and wide, because it's really only the last 150 years, maybe 200 years, that we actually realize there is a wider universe out there. That it took us a while to realize that some of the things that we were looking at in the skies weren't just stars, they were actually other galaxies.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't realize that for quite a long time. That's a more recent discovery. I mean, we don't think of it that way because we've grown up as it just being common knowledge, but it wasn't that long ago that people didn't realize there were actually other galaxies out there. So they didn't realize how big the universe is.
Yeah.
So once those, s- I guess, people that were staunchly against there being, other life out there because they didn't realize how big it was. Now that we've grown up in this, yeah, we're more warmed up to that idea of there being other life in the universe. Now, this idea of it coming here to our planet, that seems to still be this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I think because everybody is running around with a 4K or not 4K, but HD or 4K camera in their pocket with their cell phone, that the government can no longer deny. I mean, back in the day, it was like, here's a blurry photo. Here's a couple of lights in the sky. Okay, and you could make an excuse for anything, or just come up with some idea of, oh yeah, that was just weather balloon or whatever.
That's what I was gonna say.
Right, of course. But they can't do that anymore. There's too much authentic footage. A lot of it these days now with AI and all that, a lot of it's getting kind of muddled,
Yes.
um, but there's been enough legitimate footage out there they can no longer deny it. So okay, we can't deny it anymore. So what can we actually? Well, we can control what's being said. So I think that's what's happening. We're gonna say there's stuff that we don't understand what's going on. There are things in the sky we can't identify, but we're going to try to control as much as possible what it is that we're giving the people in a official capacity. So yeah, we're going to have these different hearings, congressional hearings. Again, they have helped to legitimize the type of work that we are doing, the ideas that we are postulating. But the information that's coming forth in these hearings, most of it, we've already heard.
Yep.
The idea that, and I appreciate, like David Grush coming forward. Hey, this is what I've come to understand working in my position. We have recovered crash material. Great. We've been talking about that since Roswell. Yeah.
True. True.
So yeah. And some of these other things when it comes to like the sightings, like, okay, we're gonna look at, some different, photos and pieces of video footage. And here's, like some of the things that they presented in the congressional hearings, was here's this like real quick blip like that. And it's like, really, there's a lot better footage than that. But at least they're admitting something's there. And so it's like this whole real careful process. I think the one was the only one that was really kind of new that showed up in one of those hearings was Immaculate Constellation, because that news broke like the day before, that morning or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So they have somewhere is this high res database with stuff. Okay, let's see some of that. So, but again, that kind of goes back to, well, the government has their own database of photos and videos. Okay, yeah, we kind of knew that, right?
Yeah.
So there wasn't anything really earth shattering for those who have been following along. But I hope that what it did was for everybody else that was either on the fence about UFOs or just didn't believe are now like, there may really be something here.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that was not really earth-shattering, very surprising though, was I believe Congressman Eric Burleson, I believe, and Anna Paula Luna talking about interdimensional. Now I thought
That
they were
got
going to
brought
talk
up
about
real
UFO.
quick. Yeah.
Sorry? Yeah.
Yeah, that got brought up real quick for like
Yeah.
a half a minute. Yeah.
I was surprised that they would even come with that term. That is what's being talked about, and it does make a lot of sense,
Mhm.
especially about portals, stargates.
Yep.
You're looking into the occult and what they try to do. It made perfect sense to me that these things are interdimensional because there's been science. I mean, there's been some politicians, there's been people in tech, all trying to tap into this unseen realm. So it makes sense that
Mhm.
these things would be very interdimensional in nature. But I was just surprised to hear them actually talk about that.
Yeah. It was nice to see that mentioned again. For us who have been, studying this for so long, nothing at least earth shattering to me, but it was nice to see it mentioned. It's like, okay, they're planting the seed. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just hope it's not leading to any like Project Bluebeam scenario. I hope
Yeah,
it's just they're just bringing out real stuff, you know.
could be. Yeah, you never know.
You never know. You got to keep your eyes peeled when it comes to this type of stuff because it
Yeah.
is interesting, because you're right. It is because they can't deny it anymore. I mean, there's so
Mhm.
many more people coming forward. I mean, you're talking about like blurry photos. I mean, even before that, it was just like, I have a story, and it was like, well, you're crazy. How about
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah.
that? Like, there were so many people who had so many, like Travis Walton doesn't have any pictures, but he has
No.
this incredible story, of being and having this crazy loss of time for like 5 days where he
Yep.
disappeared, and his stories never changed, and he seems very truthful. So,
Yeah,
like,
he has maintained that same story all of these years later. Yep.
yeah, exactly. Nothing's changed. So, before it was just stories, then it became blurry pictures. Now it's
Yeah.
becoming a lot of people. It's not even just that we have cameras. We've all become documentors. We see something and we go, I'm going to document this. Whether
Yeah.
it's for our own interest or not seeming crazy or financial gain, like everybody wants to document the thing that they see as closely as they can. So, yeah, I guess they just can't deny it anymore. I'm hoping that's what it is more than anything, because yeah, no, we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. There's a lot of technology out there now. AI muddles things,
Yeah.
and AI could be used both ways. It could be used to show fake things, or it could be used to show us something that we think is real. So
Yeah. There's pros and cons to AI. Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So when it comes to portals, and we're talking about interdimensional here,
Mhm.
when it comes to these UFOs, do you think that they have anything to do or are using portals, Stargates, anything like that? Or like, how do you think that whole thing works?
Like, is the government are they using
Well,
portals and circuits,
I know they have programs
or
called
are the ETs or?
the ETs themselves, you think?
Well, yeah, certainly I believe that they are, and I think, when we do see something like a UFO coming out of, a giant ball of light, that's going to be your Stargate or portal that they're traveling through. So, yeah, I believe that they have that technology, and it's going to depend on the level of sophistication of that particular being. Again, okay, we've only been around our planet 4.5 billion years. Yeah, another planet out there 6 billion, and they were probably going to have more technology than us. But another one that's out there that's been around, a civilization that's been around 9 billion, they're probably going to have certainly more than us, but also more than that one from 6 billion. So I think we're seeing a mix of different technologies from different entities that are at different levels of civilization.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very interesting. So when it comes to the time portals, and it comes to like time travel, do you think that they're actually bending time and whatnot, or do you think they're actually just using portals, and what we've come up with in terms of how they could travel so far, so fast, and everything is the whole anti-gravity bending time, or do those things mesh together?
Well, I mean, from what we understand when it comes to like connecting those two distant points, Albert Einstein, Nathan Rosen came up with the Einstein-Rosen bridge, or the idea of a wormhole. And yeah, the idea you're bending space and time and connecting those 2 points with some sort of tunnel. So, that's our understanding of it. It might be that. It might be something a little bit different that they have used to be able to make those connections. When it comes to time travel, and that's a whole other thing in and of itself, because time doesn't really exist to begin with. That's connecting two different frequencies. So each moment has its own frequency, and so it's the ability to be able to connect or tune in those two frequencies to each other. So, like when we were talking about the time slip earlier with the kid seeing himself at two different moments, when those two moments happen to resonate at the same frequency, he was able to tune into himself there for a second. And so, real time travel would be able to do something like that. Could they be using some sort of portal or Stargate to do that? Possibly. I believe that's on the table. Sure.
Hmm. Man, really something to think about. I never before looking into your work, I never really considered portals. I kind of understood, you watch enough Rick and Morty and old school Star Trek, you kind of you get familiar with portals and everything, but
Yeah.
never thought about how it actually affects us in back in time, UFOs and everything like that. So very
Absolutely.
Interesting stuff. So when it comes to ancient Egypt, Thoth, here's the thing. I
Mhm.
was doing a research for an episode, right? So I was listening to some of Tom DeLonge speaking
Okay. Yeah.
to Joe Rogan. He was talking about how the Greek gods were actually Atlanteans, and that's why they were helping these people. And it's mythology, but they were actually Atlanteans. Do you think that Thoth and other things surrounding ancient Egypt, do you think that they were Atlanteans as well? If at
Yeah,
all.
so to a degree. So what's interesting is, a lot of these characters that we see across the world in these different cultures are, like pretty much one and the same. When we look at like, okay, Thoth and Osiris, we look at like Inky and Enlil, we look at like Viracocha or Quetzalcoatl, they all have like these very, very similar attributes to each other. It's like we're really talking about the same character here, just different cultural context. So, what is going on here? Because all these cultures have this story of this great cataclysm, and some of the details might change a little bit, but generally there's a flood. There may also be volcanoes and fire and that sort of thing. Most of the people were wiped out, and the survivors many times had to flee on some sort of boat or whatever, and then they had to rebuild their civilization. We see that in cultures all over the world. So what was before that? So we call it Atlantis because that's what Plato called it. And the Greeks always changed the words. So like when Greece took over Egypt, they changed all the names of the cities. They even even Egypt itself is a Greek name. That's not what the ancient Egyptians called themselves. Uh,
Really?
yeah, it was the land was known as Kemet. It was the black land, which for the rich black soil that came down the Nile River. But yeah, the Egyptians weren't Egyptians back then. But what is fascinating about Plato's story is it's not really his story. We always say it's his story, and a lot of these historians try to say, well, he was writing a fictional story contemporary to things that he had witnessed, like maybe the eruption of Santorini and all this stuff. And it's like, well, no, actually, if you actually read Plato's story, it wasn't his story. It actually came from Solon, who predated him.
Mhm.
Solon visited, he was another Greek philosopher. He went to Egypt around 600 BC, and he studied at the Temple of Sais. He studied at Heliopolis. He was talking to all of these priests that were there. And he was telling the priests about, yeah, we had this, because the Greeks have a cataclysmic story as well. We had this, great cataclysm. Let me tell you this story about, what happened during, the flood and everything. And the priests ended up laughing at him. And they're like, hold on, you Greeks are but children. There have been many cataclysms that have happened over time. And there have been many times civilization has had to rebuild. And, they're kind of laughing at him that, your civilization was wiped out, and it was the sheep herders up in the mountains that came back down and rebuilt everything and didn't know the history from before.
Wow.
So he related to Solon this fascinating story of this early civilization that we have come to know as Atlantis. We find it in Egypt written on the walls of the temple of Edfu, and this was what they called the homeland of the primeval ones. Part of the story is there on the walls, not the whole thing, because they only had so much, even though they wrote all over those walls, there's only so much space.
Mhm.
So to them, it was part of Zep Tepi the first time, and they called it the homeland of the primeval ones. So yes, these characters that we see as the gods, or the netters is what they called them, came over during that time and helped the survivors of the cataclysm to rebuild. And this is, we call it the Atlantean story now, but this is a story that just it permeates throughout the entire world. And you even in Plato's texts, it tells us that, because when we think of Atlantis, we always think of the great ringed city, but that was really like the capital of the entire country, which spanned across the world. It went throughout Africa, included Egypt, went out into Asia, went up into Europe, all these locations. It was a huge country.
Hmm.
And when we look at the dates, so I told you Solon went back to Egypt and studied with these guys at 600 BC. what they told Solon was that this great cataclysm happened 9,000 years ago. 9,000 years before 600 BC is 9600 BC, which is the end of the Younger Dryas era. And
Wow.
yeah. So basically, that is the time where the Great Cataclysm actually happened, is written right there in the text. So, so yeah, there was. We'll call them Atlanteans. That's not what they called themselves, but yeah, it existed.
Wow. Wow. That's one of those things, when it comes to, I always, because I'm very open, right? I mean, from
Mhm.
my meditation and looking into the occult when I was younger and secret societies and just learning about all these hidden things. I was always open to someone being like, oh, there was another place and it sank. I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Like, well, and they were highly evolved. I'm like, okay, like that kind of makes sense to me. Like, I don't need too much explanation, but that the way you just broke it all down, that makes a lot of sense. And that's why you're connecting some things for me, because I love Graham Hancock, but I love him through my
Mhm.
exposure to him when in regards to Joe Rogan. But
Okay, yeah,
that whole thing just makes, that's why he's so intrigued with that era. That's why he won't leave that alone. That makes so much
right.
more sense now. Wow. Because it just lines up on the dot.
It lines up perfectly with it, and it's not like, you know, Solon would have known what the quote unquote Younger Dryas era was. That's a more modern term that we've come up with. In the Dryas is a type of flower. You know, we relate that era to a type of flower that existed at that time. So, you know, it's not something that Solon would have called it. They were just like, it was 9,000 years ago. And when you just line it up, it's like, oh yeah, that's when that happened. And that's when, you know, people are saying that the flood happened, the great cataclysm. That's when, you know, and they'll debate over, was it a comet or a solar flare or whatever the heck it was that caused that extreme warming trend that would have, you know, started melting the caps and caused different things to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Or it could have been somebody's alien technology, some kind of
Yeah, it
technology.
could have been. Yeah, just the caps got nailed with some alien death ray. I don't know.
Yeah.
We weren't there, and that's a thing, and that's part of um kind of the struggle with, you know, this kind of I guess alternative community, for lack of a better term, is that, you know, we agree that something happened, but there are these two camps that are like, well, no, or there might even be multiple camps. They're like, no, this is the way it happened. No, this is the way it happened. No, this is the way. And meanwhile, the traditional archaeologists and historians are sitting back and they're like, yeah, you guys go ahead and argue amongst yourselves, and we'll just keep feeding our narrative out there, and you guys can just bicker and destroy yourselves. So it's like, can we just agree to disagree on what caused that cataclysm? Just say there was the cataclysm,
Yeah.
and we'll just, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, at the end of the day, what does it matter? Like, I guess
nothing.
you can make sense of
You're-
why it matters. You can, come up with why it matters. But yeah, better to just agree, because I didn't realize how much, and this is another thing Graham Hancock really shined light on. I didn't realize how much there was this gatekeeping towards Egypt,
yeah.
archaeology in general. I had no idea how much of that there was. Are you experiencing anything like that when you go on your trips?
I mean, there is that. So there are times when when we're in the temples, or, you know, at a pyramid, whatever it is, that and our guide Mohammed, I mean, he's been a guide there. He's an Egyptologist. He's been doing that stuff over there for the last 25 years. But, you know, there are places that we get to, and he's like, okay, we got to keep it down a little bit here, because these guys are, it depends on who's kind of like working that day. I mean, he's buddies with most everybody, but there are some other, like, you know, traditional archaeologists and things like that that might be on site. He's like, we got to keep it down over here and not be too loud um, about whatever it might be, because yeah, and I get it. The Egyptian Antiquities Authority, I mean, they're proud people, and they, as anybody else, you know, love the fact that, you know, they are one of the most ancient and mysterious places on earth, and they have these huge, magnificent sites, and so they want to continue to lay claim to those sites, like our people built those. But here's the thing: even if it's, you know, pre-dynastic, so they're, everything for them, you know, basically has to be within dynastic Egypt, old, new, or old, middle, and new kingdoms.
Mhm.
And then like all the like little stone and flint tools and little things. Those can be the really just obscure non-tech people or whatever. Those are those primitive. Those are our primitive people. We'll just throw that in the primitive stuff. Um, they I guess what they don't see is that even if it was a civilization that had risen to great heights before that cataclysm, before the dynastic Egyptians, that it's still the Egyptians, even if they were like quote unquote Atlantean Egyptians or whatever. Like, I'm an American because this is my country, but I'm in Ohio, which would be like Egypt to Atlantis. So I'm an Ohioan. That doesn't take away,
Yeah,
me being an American doesn't take me away from me being Ohioan. You're right. So, um,
100%.
exactly. So I think they miss that aspect that we can still claim this as ours because it happened here on our land and was still our people, just a far deeper generation of that. So there's that, and then there's the aspect of um, another sense of pride, like somebody's life work. Maybe they spent 40 years on whatever the topic was, and now
Yeah,
some aspect of that has changed, and it's like, well, I don't want to admit that my life's work was crap. I don't want to lose. Maybe they have a grant to do some work. I don't want to lose my funding for my grant. So there's
yeah,
that aspect of it. Well, I wrote 15 books on the subject. I don't want all my books to be thrown out. For me, my perspective is I'll just write another book.
yeah,
You know, and it's not like you're throwing all of it out either. There's certain elements that you're going to be like, yeah, that one's wrong, that one's wrong, that one's wrong, and this one, but we can hang out of this one, we can hang out of this one, we can hang out of this one.
yeah, exactly.
And we'll form it up into this new book. Hey, here's the new information that we come across, and get a new book sales on that. So Graham, since you mentioned him, so he started with Fingerprints. Well, he had other books before Fingerprints of the God, but that was like the big one that started
Yeah,
talking about all of this, and that came out in '95. So in 2015, he came out with Magicians of the Gods 20 years later, and there were things that were quite different in Magicians of the Gods than Fingerprints of the Gods, and people asked him, why the difference? Why are you going back on what you said in Fingerprints? And he's like, I learned new stuff. A
yeah,
lot has happened in 20 years. We learned new things. I learned new things from studying and exploring and going to these places that I had to change my mind on some of these things because I learned.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Perfect. It makes perfect. Like, I mean, that is the good way to go about it, which I think is part of why they don't like Graham. Is
yeah,
because he's willing to just be like, ah, well, that was wrong and this was wrong. When you're doing that, you're constantly shedding. There's a
yeah,
lot of shedding. Like you said, you're being very charitable, but that's just a financial incentive to hang on to this narrative. And that's
yeah.
just sad. It was very sad to figure that out, to see that that was happening on such a large scale.
It does.
Because
Yeah.
at that point, it's like I get the pride of the people, but it impacts the whole course of human history.
Yep.
You're not just clinging on to your people and your patch of land, whatever you want to call it. You're holding back all of history when you do things like that. And that
Yeah,
was
because it's a collective part of all of our history.
yeah,
So it's like, yeah, it's not just you. Yes, I get it. You're the ones that are living there. It's your land. And Egypt is, I mean, that's a land that has seen a lot of evolution too, from what we would call the Egyptians, and the Persians invaded and they intermixed, and then the Greeks came over and they intermixed, and the Romans came over, they intermixed, and then the
yeah,
Arab nations and they intermix. So it's like, who's really Egyptian anymore?
yeah, yeah,
It's been such a melting pot. So it's like this is, and then the people that left from there and migrated to other areas. It's yes, it is your history, but it's also our history as well.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was shocked to see that. It's very interesting that you're actually going out there and doing that type of thing. What are you when you do these tours? Are you just looking at things? Are you actually looking to find anything yourself? Just making connections? What
Yeah,
do you
we
do?
do make some discoveries along the way. Yeah, I mean, it's not like we can go digging in the sand or anything like that out there. But yeah, so it's a lot of those discoveries through connections that we do make. There are some areas that might open up to us that are different this year than before. And there's some places that we go to that are just so huge. Like you go to Karnak Temple, and I've been there 3 times now. I still haven't seen all of it because it's just so huge and massive. And we go to new parts every time that we go. Um, so yeah, we go to we're up and down the Nile, going to all the different temples. We go to the pyramids, and yeah, we're drawing those different connections. And every time that we've gone, every tour, we've made some sort of new discovery along the way. That's like, oh, look at this, and look at this, and look at this, and this is how it ties back into that. So yeah, it's pretty incredible.
So you're talking about, having to, Graham having to change his mind after like learning new information. What was one thing as you started taking these trips that you ended up having to change your mind about, if anything?
Yeah, because I always put in there I reserve the right to change my mind in my books. Trying to think of specifically, well, some of the different things, like as I started getting more into my time travel research, kind of helped me to expand on like the shadow people stuff. Because I had some incidents that I just always kind of related to interdimensional beings, that I was like, well, that actually could be more of a time slip, that sort of related thing. So yeah, there are some things along the way that I do end up changing my mind on when it comes to Egypt. I'm trying to think specifically. Um, Trying to think of the discoveries we made last year. I mean, one of the discoveries we made was just it was in the construction of a room. So, at the Temple of Seti in Abydos, there's a room known as the Room of Ships. It's off limits to the general public. We've been able to get in there a couple of times, and when people talk about UFO spaceships, things like this, so this particular room has um it's a large open window, and the ceiling for it kind of has a slope to it, an elevation. And so somewhere like, well, this is where the ships went out of. Like, what? The ships, like the spaceships? Yeah, this is space. Okay. Now we'll run with that. It kind of looks like that, and they call this the Room of Ships. But last year when we were in there, and Mohammed had noticed, because we're kind of looking up at that area, pointing it out, and Mohammed noticed, well, the capital on top of the columns is cut off there. It's not like perfectly circular at the top, like the back side of it is, but this part in the middle is just straight. It's like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I never noticed that before. So as we're kind of looking up at it, like, hey, Mohammed, it's not just at the top. Look at the side of this column. And at the side of the column was straight. Like, it was not a perfectly circular column. It's like, this is straight down too. So from there, it keeps going straight. And so went to back up to take a photo of this whole thing, of this little discovery that we made. But when I backed up to take the photo, I noticed, wait, this whole thing is at a slight V shape. And this is, I've never seen anything like this anywhere else in Egypt. They're all perfectly circular columns, all that sort of thing. But no, here's these straight lines cut in there at this interesting V shape. Again, this is the Room of Ships, because alongside the walls, there are all these depictions of ships along the walls, not spaceships there, though. They were boats. So then looking at this, I'm like, just the way this is set up, is this a dry dock? Yeah, like you could like stick a boat right in there. It's like, that might work. Of course, I might change my mind on that later if we discover something else. But yeah, so not spaceships flying out of these things, like putting a ship in here.
That's interesting. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I gotta watch more of those videos when you're actually out there, because it looks wild. That's one place I really want to go to. I want to go to the places that have all the unique architecture. I want to go to Italy and I want to see
Yeah,
the Vatican and everything. I would love to be able to go to. Um, my brother was just in Athens. He was showing me some stuff that he saw there, some really
nice.
old temple type places. I really want to go to Egypt. I really
Yeah.
want to see what all that looks like. I want to feel it. I really want to
I'd
feel it.
love to have you along with our Stargates tour one of these days. That'd be great. You'd love it.
Yeah, that would be great. That like as soon as you said that there was like still spots, I'm like, oh, if I didn't have the whole husband and father thing going on right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, you got the little one, so and I
Yeah.
totally understand that. But we run that annually, so yeah, we haven't set the next one yet. So this one, of course, coming up in November, and then we'll set the schedule for the next one,
Yeah.
which might be next November, or we might kick it to 2027, like early.
Okay.
So,
That'd be cool. That'd be really cool to check out because those are like the top three. Every place that just has unexplainable architecture
yeah,
that it's just absolutely wild. I mean, the Vatican is explained in a way, but then I don't know. Some of it you see and you just go, like, really? Just a guy? It was just a guy and he's just doing
yeah,
that. And that's it. That's just how it was, just for years. I'm like, okay. I don't
yeah.
know.
So some of these things that they're just really, really incredible, and that's another thing is like with with ancient Egypt, the technology that they said that they had, oh, just stone and copper tools, and you're looking at granite being cut perfectly in the perfect symmetry from one side of the
Yeah.
face to the other. Some of these sculptures, it's like that's
Yeah.
not copper because, well, for one, copper can't cut granite, so there's that.
Yeah.
And then like the back side of this one sarcophagus, you can find it at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. It's they have it tipped over, and it's the bottom of the sarcophagus where they are, looks like they were cutting the lid off the bottom of the thing.
Mhm.
Now, according to traditional archaeology, the ancient Egyptians did not have circular saws. But yeah, what you see with this thing is, part of it's broken off, but you can still see these cuts that are going into the lid part that they're cutting off the back of the sarcophagus. And when you shine a flashlight down in there, you can actually see the circular grooves, one on top of the other, cutting this thing off. And I took this to my dad. He doesn't know anything about Egyptian history or anything like that.
Mhm.
He's a machinist. I'm like, Dad, take a look at this. What cut that? And he's looking. I was like, well, circular saw, obviously. Okay, there's that. Okay, well, what what type of circular saw? He's like, well, that's granite, right? Like, yeah. He's like, diamond tip blade. It's like
Yeah.
nothing the ancient Egyptians were supposed to have. No circular saws, no diamond tip blades, but there it is.
Yeah.
Right in front of you.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. I forget what his name is. I think it's Zahan, something like that. He's an Egyptologist.
Zahi Hawass.
Yeah, he was on Rogan and he just kept saying
Yep.
it was the national project. He goes, everything that couldn't be explained, he'd be like, it's the national project.
Or
Like,
buy my book. Just buy my
yeah.
book. Buy my book. Buy my book. Buy my book. Like, yeah, I want you to buy my book too, but man, I'm sitting here, trying to explain as much as I can. All right.
I thought that was such a funny episode. It was the first
Yeah.
time I saw Joe Rogan like get like tense. Like he was
He
like,
was he was
like
getting really annoyed.
he's like he was getting very, very annoyed. He's just like, this
Yeah.
is getting ridiculous. But yeah. I mean, I guess the only thing I really have left is just talking about do you know anything about the connection between the occult and science? I was talking about it earlier. The fact that all these realms of study are
Mm.
all trying to access this unseen realm that's
Right.
around us, and some of them are successful, like Jack Parsons and Nikola Tesla.
Mhm.
But do you know anything about that? Have you seen any of that in modern day?
Yeah, it's interesting because, yeah, when Parsons was friends with Crowley.
Yeah.
Um And yeah, Nikola Tesla. Now he was, because he did dabble in that. He was doing things with astral projection way back in the day, and he always pointed back to the pyramids as far as, like, they're harnessing energy. And a lot of the things that he studied about that, he was trying to do with his technology, with like the Wardenclyffe Tower and all that. And so we didn't really talk all that much about, how time works and all that, but the idea that all time is ever present, past, present, and future. It's all here right now. Take where you're sitting. Everything that has happened is happening and will happen. It's all right there. And I call it stack time theory because I liken every moment, and that is like a photograph on a giant stack of photographs. Uh, Einstein called it the block universe, everything being there. So with that in mind, I think guys like Tesla and what he just had this fantastic open mind and what he had studied and what he was tapping into, and he did his thought experiments, kind of like, Einstein did thought experiments too, is that he was tapping into some of that knowledge. So Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious. Some people call it the Akashic records. I call it eternal knowledge, all the knowledge of the universe, because if all time is here, that means everything that was learned in the past and everything that will be learned in the future is all here concurrently. So I think what Tesla was doing was tapping into a lot of that knowledge from the future to do some of the things that he was trying to do. Like he built the world's first drone, where he built, and it just looked like a little tiny boat, but it was radio controlled. And the whole idea, it was 1890s, the Spanish American War. The whole idea behind this thing was, okay, let's not use humans for warfare. Let's use machines. So he was arming this thing with torpedoes, and he's like, we're gonna target that boat over there with this little one that has these torpedoes. And he's like, look, I can build within it the capacity for it to figure out what target it needs to hit and when to launch the torpedo. So he's talking about AI, right? He's got a drone. He's talking about AI in the 1890s, and he's like, and people are laughing at him. It's like, look, while people are laughing at him, he's like, look, I can do this with myself. He called it a teletomaton. He's like, I can build a teletomaton of myself, make it look like me, act like me, and respond just like me. So now he's talking about AI and a robot, right? In the 1890s. The thing with Tesla is, so he already had these ideas, and he talked about, stuff like having all the knowledge of the world in your pocket on a device, which now we have, with cell phones. It's not all stored on the phone, but we have access to it. He didn't know the method that it was going to happen, right? When he was talking about the teletomaton and some of these other things, he was thinking it was going to be gears and wheels and radio waves and all that. He didn't know it was going to be stuff like the silicone microchip, because that wasn't invented until 16 years after he died. But he had the ideas; they were there. So it was something that he was tapping into and bringing down with him. And he just didn't have the right tools at his disposal because it was so far into the future.
Yeah. So it's like he had everything down, because I heard he would tap into astral projection. He'd go into trance states. So he had that part down, but the technology just wasn't there. It's
he didn't have those tools in between to make it happen. It's like he's got the ideas and he's drawn up these different schematics and the ideas are there, but the at that time they didn't have the microchip. They didn't have the small capacitors and all those sorts of things, transistors and things. They didn't exist back then, so he couldn't make it happen with the with the technology he had at his disposal. But even like with the Wardenclyffe Tower, he's talking about doing worldwide. He's basically talking the internet. He also wanted to be for energy, for power as well, but he's talking about worldwide communications. And again, kind of getting laughed at. Marconi, who had taken his technology, at the same time was showing, hey, I can send a signal from shore to ship, and of course ship to shore, back and forth. And the investors at the time, the other inventors, were looking at, oh yeah, that's impressive, using Tesla's technology. They're like, yeah, okay, we can see that. We can make sense. That's why Tesla's like, for one, he was ticked off that Marconi was using his technology, and he fought that until the day he died. It was like a couple years later, after he died, that they finally awarded him the credit of inventing the radio, even though in our school books it was still saying Marconi. And in fact, I grew up when I was in the 80s learning it was Marconi, but actually Tesla was finally awarded the invention of the radio. But yeah, he's like, Tesla or Marconi's using my technology, but that's chump change. That's nothing to go from the shore to ship. Yeah, that is nothing. We're going to do the world. I can see the vision. I know that this is going to happen across the world. And that was just too big for everybody. They couldn't see that bigger picture. They were just like, no, whoa, the whole world. No, 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 no. That's too much. This is practical. We see this. This is practical.
Yeah.
You're out of your mind. And of course, look at what we have today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think back then, you couldn't even think of a reason why it would be the whole world. If you brought that up to somebody, they'd be like, for what reason? They'd be like, I can't understand a guy in China. How are we even we're not even gonna be able to communicate. Like, this is nonsense.
Yeah, his whole idea was and it's very much like the internet. We're going to send messages back and forth. We're going to send, it's like, if you investors want to know stuff about the stocks, we're going to send, the stock information through. We're going to send images through this. And he's talking about the internet. And by the way, the Wardenclyffe Tower goes, I forget how many feet into the ground, but tens of feet into the ground, or it might be 100 feet or something. Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. So he had proposed building a 300-foot tower, and JP Morgan was like, you're out of your mind. You're not building a 300-foot tower. This is your money. That's it. But between how tall the tower ended up being and how far it dove into the ground, I think he was awarded like half of it. And so he got it between the top of the tower and how far he burrowed into the ground, that it ended up being that 150, the half of the 300. So, and the idea here of getting into the ground like that was tapping into that earth energy, which again, he got that idea from the pyramids harnessing the energy of the earth.
Oh, like thermic energy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And then, you know what?
Thermic, but also the electromagnetism of the earth.
Oh, is there? I only knew about like the heat of it, but there's actually electricity of sorts.
The electromagnetism of the earth. Yeah, the electromagnetism that's coming out of the Earth's core. Yeah.
Wow. I did not know that. I did not know that much about Tesla. I always, because at the time when I first dove into him, I was into Buddhism and learning about Hinduism and all these different things. So when I heard that this incredible genius was also into those things and what he believed, that's what made me gravitate towards it, more his belief system and going into these trances and stuff. I thought that was really cool. But that's very so far ahead of his time and such a sad ending.
It really was. Well, the thing with Tesla is he wasn't a good businessman. So
creative.
Yeah, he was a creative, he was a visionary. And when it came to business, like can't remember if it was Morgan or Astor, but one of them in his contract was, they said, we're going to do this, 50-50. And Tesla said, well, you're the one fronting the money. You should have 51.
Oh.
So then they go to court, and because Tesla had negotiated himself down to 49, he lost.
Wow.
Yeah, he was not a good businessman.
But I mean, like when one of your aspirations is free energy for the world, you're not going to be the best businessman, and also you're not going to be taken well by the best businessmen of your era, right? Yeah. They're going to extinguish that idea very quickly. Sometimes I wonder if they had those blueprints for what he was talking about in regards to free energy, and they're not just using that and then charging the rest of us.
So there's the idea of there was certainly that. It's all about the money.
Yeah.
So there's the idea of the Tesla cash, so that when Tesla passed away, they raided his apartment there at the New Yorker, and made off with most of his documents and whatever equipment he had on hand and all that. And so somewhere they have that information, whatever in the world that he was working on, his ideas of free energy and all that.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. There is the fun theory that Trump's uncle was one of the first people to get in there, and he took the schematics for time travel.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, his time traveling uncle, Baron. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I love that story. Yeah. When I hear that story, I'm like, oh, it's so, especially when you look at the books that were written, I'm like, oh, this is just, and then you look at the little boy that's in the books and it looks like him. I'm like,
right.
wow,
Yeah.
Like that right there has to be some kind of time slip. There's something that happened there. That's a very, very odd.
Well, again, I do believe in that, eternal knowledge. So somebody was tapping into something and was able to pull that down, basically download it, and that's where I do believe in time travel, but not in that form. So, but yeah, I think something happened there where, yeah, they were tapping into that knowledge, kind of like Tesla was, and because this was, the written word, we just got to write it down. Where Tesla was having a little bit of a challenge there because he just didn't have the technology to build what he wanted to build.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. He was going at it. Hopefully we get another one. People say Elon's like the new Tesla type. I don't know if that's true, but
Well, he's certainly a visionary.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons to Elon. There's parts of there's things he does that I like and things that he does that I don't. His idea of going to Mars, yeah, we need to do it. At some point we need to get off the planet because the planet's not going to be here forever. At some point, billions of years from now, the sun will become a red giant and destroy the Earth. But long before that, it will have evaporated all the oceans anyway. So yeah, so we eventually need to get off the planet. We need to figure out getting to other planets in the solar system as some of those steps, and then furthermore we need to figure out how to get to other solar systems and figure out interstellar travel just for the species to survive. So yeah, him wanting to go to Mars, yeah, we need to take those steps.
Yeah. What do you think about the brain chips?
I'm not so much into that, but yeah, transhumanism is happening. We see it more and more and more as we become more accustomed to wearing technology. It's like I can't go anywhere without my cell phone because I got to get my steps in, and that's what keeps track of my steps, right? A lot of people like the VR systems. I do. I use my VR system for working out. I have a boxing game on there, and it's a nice cardio workout, right? So so it's great. And then you're hearing about these different things that we're going to put into like for contact lenses, so kind of augments our reality. We already have like augmented games on our phones and stuff where you just hold it up and it's like a whole new world right through your screen.
Definitely.
So we're already seeing that.
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening. I just hope it when it comes to the whole brain thing, I just hope it doesn't become a scenario where they start telling people that you need to do this.
Right.
Need to do this. Like I hate the language that I hear about, if you want to keep up, then you're gonna have to do this. And that's where I don't want it to go. I love that it's because if you see the people who have it right now, it's beautiful stories. There's people who are paralyzed and they're able to. There's one guy who lost
stuff like that. I mean, it's perfect. The technology is perfect for that. Yeah,
I love it, man, because this guy lost his voice. He has like 3 young kids, and it gave him back his voice because of AI and large language models, and actually hearing his voice in recordings gave him back his voice. He used to have to stay in dark rooms in order to like work his computer and actually communicate. Now he can go outside with his kids. It's like the stories like that are just beautiful. I love stuff like that. I just don't want it to become like, oh, if you don't do this, you're a bad person. I don't want it to get to that scenario, again.
Right. Yeah. I feel you there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this, man. I really,
thanks for having me, Colin. Yeah.
No problem, man. I just I really Christina suggested it and I jumped right on it right away, and I'm really glad I did because this was a great conversation and I would love to do it again. If you have anything going on, book, new events going on, anything, new theory, time, even if you want to come back and just talk about time, like I would love, there's actually there's a physicist, old school guy, Jack Sarfati, and
I'm familiar with Jack.
I want him on the podcast, and he's an older gentleman, I got a lot of respect for him, and he ran me through the ringer when I was trying to get him on the podcast. He's like, give me all your questions. And then he graded the questions with like red text. He's like, yeah, I already talked about this, like he's correcting it and everything. He's like, you have this book. So I had to find a book from the 1960s. I bought it for like $150.
Oh
It
my
came
God.
yesterday. I got to read this book. I got to read how hippies saved physics. And then after I come with some more questions, then he'll be on the podcast. I'm like, oh man,
Wow.
this guy.
Jack is pretty old school. Yeah, for sure. He's got a lot of fascinating ideas though. So you'll have a good conversation with him. But yeah, pretty
Yeah.
old school.
I just,
I'm just one of those like just ask away.
yeah,
It will
yeah.
talk. Yeah.
But yeah, he ran me through it. It was really funny. I'm like, oh man, this is nuts. This guy's like yeah, like you said, he's old school.
Yeah.
Really, I think he's almost 90 now. Maybe he's
He's
even
up there
older.
always. Yeah, I don't know exactly how
Yeah.
old he is, but he's up there. Yeah.
But guys, this is the website. Please check it out. There are books on this website. You can check out Portals to the Stars, Travels Through Time, Alaska's Mysterious Triangle, A Walk in the Shadows, many other books right here. Check it out. You can also hit the newsletter, get in the know. Let me go to TV and film. Has all his appearances here. Absolutely amazing. And we've got a celebrity here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, in the events and tours, I have to update the page for that. We just announced yesterday our we always do the Egypt tour, but we have our Germany tour. We're going to the Black Forest, and we have a Rhine River cruise next September. So
Really?
so that'll be updated there on the event schedule here soon. And then we're doing these other things. We have the Scottish Castle Retreat there in Scotland for Halloween, which is amazing. I have the interdimensional universe presentation that I'm giving at the Wandle House Museum here in Ohio on September 27th. And then my partner Kate and I, we're doing these Travels Through Time workshops. One is in Scotland on October 25th, and the other, I don't think I have it on there yet. The other is going to be on December 6th, also here in Ohio. So a lot of different options. But if you just go to my page or just go to my site, MikeRicksecker.com, go to events and tours like you're showing there, you can see a lot of the different things that are going on.
Cool. And this is coming up. Is this within the date like now? Like this is September 27th coming up?
Yeah, you can see some old July dates that I had on there, like when I did the MUFON Symposium and other things that I did in there. But that should be, I think what's missing from there, it's a little small on my side. Yeah, the Travels Through Time workshop is missing through there. So I'll have to add that. But that's October 25th and December 6th. And then, interdimensional. The next one I have coming up is interdimensional universe presentation here in Ohio.
Cool. And then we also have the podcast here. You can find it everywhere: Spotify, iHeart, Apple, and also just
check out the YouTube channel.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, that's the next thing. Throw up the YouTube channel here.
I've got over 800 videos on there. So yeah,
I think it's crazy that you're at 22,000 subscribers. When I saw this, I was like, something is up with that. You gotta. I don't know if it's
everybody tells me that. My gosh, because I've been on this platform for 11 years. It was just my 11th anniversary. And it was kind of cool because I'm a numerology guy. It was 11 years, and the number was 22222. So it was like, that's cool. But it's like I've been on this platform forever. Everybody says why do you not have as many subscribers and followers? Like, I wish I knew. If I knew the answer to that. And I've gone through like a lot of the training courses. Like I've been through, video creator stuff with Tim Schmoyer, great guy, very knowledgeable. And it's like I've tried and I don't know. So it's like I'm tired trying to figure out the algorithm. I'm just putting my stuff up there, and whatever happens.
Yeah, I was saying to my wife actually today, I was like, because I was looking at the channel, I'm like, I have to audit this guy's channel. I'm like, I have to look at all the SEO behind the scenes.
If you have some ideas and suggestions, Colin, I would love that.
100%. Because I won't show it here on screen or anything, but I have this tech where I can see the tags that you put in behind the scenes and your channel tags and stuff, because something's going on there. I also know a little bit about thumbnails and whatnot. And titling, because I'm constantly I put out a video every day pretty much. So
that helps too. You are daily like that, and I'm more like one a week. That and I YouTube used to like doing lives, and it seems like they don't like that so much anymore. And I've been like way back in the day, I was doing a lot more of the short form videos, like 8, 10, 12 minutes. And over the last couple of years, it's been more of the live streams, Wednesday nights,
Yeah.
8 to 9. And it's like, yeah, that hasn't done as well.
Yeah. I find that as well too. I don't know what I think at one point they were trying to keep up with the streaming platforms, and now I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I noticed that same thing as well with
Mhm.
lives.
Yeah.
I noticed that they're liking the actual uploaded videos more so.
Yeah.
But
Although shorts have been doing a lot better for me lately.
shorts, yeah, shorts will definitely do that. But yeah, I'm gonna look into it and see if I have any suggestions for you, and
I would appreciate that. Yeah.
I'll email them over for sure. I wanna look, because as soon as I saw it, I'm like, huh, because you're hitting the topics. These are the topics people want to hear about. Like I know they are, because I talk about them as well.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of research under you have a lot of facts under you, right? So you're hitting all the things. So I gotta really check it out and see what's going on here. But Mike, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it. Again, I'm not just saying it's not
Mhm.
Hollywood talk where I'm like, we got to do it again. If you want to do it again, if you want to
Yeah.
talk about time travel, if you want to talk about your theory of time, if you're releasing a new book, a new event, anything, let me
Okay.
know and we'll do it again for sure.
Perfect. I appreciate that. Yeah, we definitely should. This has been a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Here, I'm just going to click off here. Stay with us for a second. Oh, and bye, everybody. Go subscribe to Mike's channel.